No kings. No kings. This was the No Kings rally. The No Kings rally apparently was the largest in U.S. history. There were 7 million people across, oh God, so many different cities, um, protesting what I assume that they don't like kings, which is fascinating since we don't have a king in America. But obviously, this was aimed at Donald Trump. And I would imagine there were a list of issues: immigration, ICE raids, military in cities, Trump specifically, probably the farmers, the government shutdown, people losing jobs, etc. That is a lot of things to put under the banner of one protest: no kings. And some of those things fall firmly within presidential power. I haven't heard necessarily anybody complain about the murdering of Venezuelan fishermen, or for the matter, either the genocide, but I would imagine that those people were also at the protests. As I pointed out, millions of people showed up at the protests. A lot of this stuff was very whimsical. For example, like this. Don't take their bait. We the people dissent. Man in a shark costume. Paint again. This is a guy in a dinosaur costume. Another guy, I guess that's Roman gladiator costume with jeans on. This is a chicken with his neck broken. People with drums. There's a person look like in a pig costume or something. Hat dog costume. Faux king way. There's another person. I think you get my point of some of the costumes. Here's a woman in a Statue of Liberty, etc., etc., etc. Another chicken costume. My favorite, Alien 51. Today, us, tomorrow, you. No kings. I don't know what that means, but fair enough, fair enough. This was the protests pushing back against what they considered to be a tyrant. And I would agree with them that Donald Trump is deeply problematic. You've heard me complain bitterly about the fact that he's putting military on home soil and what that may mean going forward into the future for the next year and year and year after that. I believe this is some level of a playbook. And I'm also under the belief that there will be a response to this playbook that may fracture what it means to be America. Nevertheless, when asked about this protest, a person in the Trump administration says something to the effect of, who cares? Who cares? It threatens no one. There are no demands. And for all intents and purposes, it's a chicken breakdancing in front of cops. And one of the cops even applauded at the chicken breakdancing. It is not a bad thing to get a large number of people out. And protests have a tendency to escalate. The catch is, this is a once-off from my understanding. So this is not like the Yellow Vest movement where you have people coming out over and over and over and over and over again, etc. This is a show of rebuke by a certain percentage of the population that doesn't necessarily like Trump and that may not have liked them even during the election. Keep in mind, that election, 40, 50 million people voted for Kamala Harris, give or take. And when you have that many people, if you have a fraction of that number of people coming out to protests, then you would get something that looks like 7 million people in the streets in various cities. But again, this is not me denigrating it. This is not me undercutting it. This is not me downplaying it. My issue with this is I get the sense that this is a democratic protest, meaning this is not, we hate both political parties and we need a change in our system and here are our demands. This is more like, we need to get Kamala Harris in office. We need to get Gavin Newsom in office. We need to get some rando Democrat in office who, for all intents and purposes, are going to go in and not do anything for us that we actually want in real terms. Because again, what are the demands? That there is not a king? Okay. That ICE immigration raids are more gentle, or they stop? Now, again, you have to kind of cut that a particular way. ICE immigration raids, the majority of the public will probably accept you deporting criminals. They may even not really care about some of the raids that are taking place on the streets, even though they may think it's impolite. But what's the demand? What's the key demand? What is the thing that you're asking for that Donald Trump doesn't become a king? Is that what you're asking for? I hope you get my point. Protests always supposed to have a hint of violence behind the protests. It's just the way it works. And it works that way because you want a show of force. What you're doing is saying, look, this is our support. And if this continues in this way, then the support is going to be less friendly and agreeable over the course of time. The guy in the frog suit may be in a frog suit, but he's going to be very angry in that frog suit, etc. And I get the whimsical nature of it. They're trying to humiliate power by wearing these costumes and by breakdancing in front of the cops and everything else. I get it. I get it. I don't hate it. What I hate about it is that there are no demands associated with it, that it threatens nobody, and that for all intents and purposes, it most likely will fall under the auspices of a Democratic pep rally in multiple cities. I could be wrong. I could be wrong. But anytime you get that many people coming out, I don't necessarily want to denigrate that many people coming out. They're obviously angry. They're obviously bothered by what is taking place around the United States, as they should be. But Jesus Christ, is your key demand that Donald Trump doesn't become a king? Is that your key demand? And do you think anybody in Washington, including Trump, cares? The government has been shut down for over 30 days. This is the longest shutdown in government history. Trump doesn't care. The Republicans don't care. And for all intents and purposes, what Democrats are effectively fighting for are extensions to the subsidies for the Affordable Care Act, an act that doesn't quite entirely do the job for healthcare, but people are so beaten down on this issue that they're willing to accept it. It threatens no one. It's my main issue. And that just threatens no one. It has no demands associated with it. Or, I'm sorry, there's one key demand, that Donald Trump doesn't become a king. Okay. I'm going to go to my guest. He is back from vacation. The man himself, Carl Jha. How you doing, Carl? Did you have a good break?
I had a great break. I spent about 35 days in China. I just got back yesterday. And let me tell you, I had a great time.
I'm so jealous.
Last time
I saw some of those pictures.
You should go. I mean, I recommend to everybody, even the people who are China haters, go just so you know what you're actually hating about, right? And it's I said last time, I think I was in China before the May holiday, and I said back then, I think China's economy is on the recovery mode from what I observed. And this time just further confirmed my conviction, because I was there just before, during, and after China's national holiday. The domestic tourism is booming in China, from big cities like Shanghai or Chongqing all the way to Xinjiang, which I spent about 2 weeks traveling through. Even in the ancient city of Kashgar, tourists everywhere, and they're spending their money. Of course, there are still some sector that's being hard hit by the burst of real estate bubble. It depends on who you ask, because I have many cousins. One of my cousin is in construction and real estate business, and he's like, "Oh man, times are bad. When you were here last time in 2019, that was the best time. Now China is at an inflection point. We could be looking at like Japan in the 90s. If this transition doesn't work, man, we're all screwed." Right. And then my stockbroker cousin's like, "Oh, things are great. The Americans are just butthurt because they can't. Now with the rise of China, Americans will actually have to work hard for a living." And so it really depends on who you're asking how the economy is doing. But having said that, even though one of my cousin is bearish, other cousin is bullish, both of them have very nice lives. Both of them have very nice apartments, drive nice cars. So I mean, things looking good from an outside perspective, at least from my perspective. Yeah.
It's like things suck. And let me get in my great car and go to my nice apartment. No, I get that. That is awesome. No, man, I'm glad you had a good time. I saw one of the pictures that I saw, you were on, oh God, you were way up in the sky. It was on a bridge or something like that. And
that's Raffles City's Chongqing. So for people who have traveled to Singapore, they're probably already seeing one of the Raffles City architecture that looks like a spaceship on top, or a train on top of high-rise building. So it's by the same company. They they developed this prime estate in Chongqing, which is a junction of two rivers, the Yangtze River and the Jialing River. And so I was able to go to very top. They offer us an option to do the skywalk. So they actually let you hang from the railings. There's only like one railing, and you have like a hook, like a safety harness, and you hook yourself to the railing, and then you walk on the outside of the building. It's I don't know. I probably wouldn't do it again, but now I can say I have done it. I was pretty scared. I'm not gonna lie. My knuckles were white from gripping the railing the whole time. But it was amazing. It was an amazing view. An amazing city.
Is there anything that you saw that you hadn't seen prior when you were in China, like new development, like China's building a huge dam, for example? And some of the people were complaining.
One thing I felt is just everything got so okay. One thing I felt is that everything got super convenient for the Chinese citizens and for long-term residents of China who have figured out the mobile payment thing. Because I think for the first-time traveler to China, they still need a little bit onboarding. I wish they have an information booth right at the airport. Say, okay, we'll take your phone here. You need to download this Alipay, download WeChat. You need to hook up with your foreign bank card. Here, you need to verify your identity. Just enter your passport information. Now you're ready to go. You're ready to make mobile payment wherever you go. So I did know that. I'm Chinese. I speak Chinese. I thought I had no problem. I downloaded Alipay just before going to China. I already associated with my bank card, but when I went to pay for my SIM card at the Shanghai airport, it says suspicious activity, decline. I'm like, what? And then I realized, I have to. So I had to turn on my VPN, looking up a YouTube tutorial how to work your Alipay, and it tells me, okay, you need to verify your identity. So I just put in my passport information. After that, everything worked. But still, there's still some tricks. When I went to use the Shanghai or Chongqing metro station, I was doing the thing I was doing 10 years ago. So I would go to the ticketing booth. I would select my destination on the screen, on the touch screen, and you would tell me how much it will cost. And then I use my Alipay, scan it to pay the exact amount, and you will spit out a plastic card to allow me to, swipe into the metro station. So I thought it was so cool for knowing this. I was showing off to my wife. And later I met up with an expat friend of mine, Daniel Downbro in Chongqing. He's like, "What are you doing, man? Like you're going it's so backwards. Here, give me your phone." And he showed me okay, on Alipay there's a mini app called Metro. Just click on Metro, select your city, your current city, which is Chongqing, and then you generate a QR code. All you have to do is just hold the QR code and scan at the entrance, and then you scan the QR code again once you get off the Metro, so you automatically calculate how much it will cost. And by the way, the cost is negligible. A trip around Chongqing cost me anywhere from 2 to 4 RMB, which is like 50 cents, less than 50. Yeah, it's like 50 cents US. It's nothing. And it's super convenient because once you get off the Metro, well, if you don't have children, if you're traveling alone or traveling with adults, it's super easy because outside the Metro station, you can find these ride-share bikes or electric scooters. You can, again, use Alipay, you scan the QR code, you'll rent to you for like $1, like a 1.5 RMB for the first hour. And it's just, then you can ride the bicycle or the e-scooter all over the city, and you just need to park at designated spots. So it's super convenient. So cool. If you have a Chinese Google doesn't work, so you need a Chinese map app called they call the A map, which is really good. I think now they have an English version because my wife downloaded that and she said it was much better than Google Maps. And with that map app, with the Metro, a rideshare app and also e-hailing. They have so Uber got pushed out of China. They got bought out by Didi, the Chinese rideshare
Same thing here.
giant.
Yeah.
And it's super easy, man. Like just everything. Like the thing about China metro big cities now is very the walkability, because it has metro combination of metro, rideshare bikes, scooters, plus is the e-hailing taxis, and with the map app you can go anywhere in the metro. I mean, like anywhere very easily.
Oh, that's so cool.
Everything is walking distance. It's great. I mean, for us it's a little bit work because I took my wife, 2 kids. Our youngest is a 1 year and 3 month old
family.
So we have to push I have to push a big baby car. So that's one area China could improve, is the handicap accessibility. I mean, I already saw signs. They're installing a lot of elevator for the skywalks and stuff. But I wish they have more, because I was pushing a big baby cart everywhere. But we made it work. It was fun. I recommend it to everyone.
That sounds very cool, man. My mom is always shocked when I tell her. I was like, yeah, I got a motorcycle to get from point A to point B. I think it was like $1.50. And she's like, really? It's like, yes. Because here, we have Grab. And Grab does everything.
Yeah.
Delivery, transport, bikes. God, man. I think they even pick up stuff and take it from point A to point B. That's pretty much everything. I'm so glad you had a good time, man. I really am.
Talk about the point A to point B. So we have people. We needed. So we realized we needed the SD card reader when we went to Xinjiang. So our people just called ahead. They had they ordered the SD card reader online, delivered to the hotel that we're gonna stay in Xinjiang. So by the time we flew into Xinjiang Urumqi Airport, checked into our hotel, our delivery package was waiting for us at the front desk at the hotel. Everything was done within a day. One day delivery. I mean, it's amazing.
Oh, that's so cool. So it's very integrated technologically in the way, because I've seen people order. Yes. What was the guy? Speed. He's like a YouTuber or something. And he's in China. He's like ordering stuff by drone that flies and then drops the delivery where he is. And he's like just blown away. He's like I can't believe that this is the way this country is. It's very technologically integrated. No, that's amazing. That is amazing. So you were there as the whole trade war has effectively kicked back up steam with the whole.
Yeah.
Well, I guess there were a few things. Trump was doing things behind the scenes against China. China gets pissed off. China's like, okay, fair enough. You're not going to get any semiconductors. Well, not semiconductors. You're not going to get any rare earths. And it wasn't just rare earths. It was even the processing of those rare earths. So it was not just the minerals themselves. It went to, if I'm not mistaken, like lithium, manganese. It was a few. Don't take my word
everything, for man. Like now China just expanded the export control. So it's not an outright ban. It's export control. So that means anybody who need rare earth, they need to file the application to the Chinese Commerce Ministry. Please, sir, can I have some rare earth for the next 6 months? Can you approve my export license?
And of course, China's going to say, what do you plan to use it for? Which is the worst part, right? What do you plan to do with these? What do you intend to do with these?
We need for some F-35s and our Patriot missiles. And now rejected. This is why
not so much.
This is why Scott Besson has been going off railing against China in the past few days, because they really have no options. They thought, China have a full deck of cards. Like I mentioned before, China has the U.S. by the balls in the critical mineral area. There's so much copium nowadays about, rare earth is not rare. It's everywhere in the Earth's crust. Well, that's fine. I mean, we know that for a long time. You know this for 10 years ago. You have been knowing this for 10 years ago. And guess what? China still controls 90% of the rare earth processing. So when they dug out the rare earth from the Mountain Pass mine in California, they still ship it to China for processing. That process only had been stopped because the Trump's trade trade war that they raised the tariff too high, so they just recently stopped sending the mines of the rare earth mine from California to China for processing. But still, it's really hard to break through the China's dominance in this area, because China had 40 years developing the infrastructure, the supply chain, and the human capital. Like all the top Chinese university, like Tsinghua, Fudan, they have PhD programs for the rare earth chemistry. They graduate tens of thousands of PhDs who specialize in rare earth processing, how to further improve the rare earth processing. Whereas in China or United States, that study of field doesn't exist anymore, because that industry doesn't exist anymore in the United States. It's been 40 years. All those people who once knew how things work, they have retired already. And, they haven't been able to train a new generation to take their place. So for U.S. to kind of start this whole supply chain, it's going to take them decades. It's going to take them 10 years. But U.S. government do not have that kind of attention span, to pursue a project that will last decades. All they care about is the next election cycle. So this is why U.S. has known about China's dominance of the rare earth minerals, and the Congress actually have been crying about how U.S. need to develop its own rare earth supply chain for the last 10 years, and nothing was done. I mean, they did try, but not successfully. So I don't expect it to be any different this time.
So something I didn't know was like 75% of the U.S. military runs on products either from China or as a third party from China, meaning it's either directed from China or from some kind of Chinese subsidiary or some kind of process that goes through China. That number is astonishing. Like, your military effectively runs off of another country's product, and you're trying to go to war with that same country. What did they expect to take place? It's like nobody thought this through.
The CEO of Raytheon actually said the decoupling is not happening. The U.S.-China decoupling is not happening because we still need to source our components and material from China. And this is why there's a lot of bluff from Washington right now about how this is China versus the world. We're going to build a democratic alliance to contain China, and it's not happening, man. I mean, like, China has been prepared since the first Trump term, since 2018, to prepare for the worst scenario, which is decoupling from the United States. Whereas Trump, did he have any plans for the fallout of a trade war? I mean, did he? Right now, China has virtually stopped purchasing soybean from the United States. That's really hurting American farmers. And guess what Trump did? He went to subsidize Milei from Argentina with another $40 billion payout, while China has switched to purchase soybean from Argentina. So United States is subsidizing essentially soybean export of Argentinian farmers to China, while China is purchasing zero American soybeans right now. This is why I was being a troll on Twitter. I say, all right, America, time to learn how to eat tofu. That's another thing. Trump's retaliation. He said, we have a trade with cooking oil. If China stops purchasing soybean, we're not gonna purchase cooking oil from you anymore. So this is interesting because the cooking oil they're talking about, the importing from China, was actually known as a gutter oil. It was a big scandal more than decades ago when a Chinese reporter went underground, undercover, and exposed like a lot of the small restaurants that were recycling used cooking oil to cook up food. So that those oil were known as gutter oil. So what happened later is they discovered, hey, we can. So Chinese government start to ban this. They start really tighten the food regulation on gutter oil. So what happened then? They found a new source for those gutter oil, which is to use as a low grade biodiesel. And so those were the gutter oil was exported then to United States. So that's the oil that Trump is threatening. He's gonna cut the importing of the gutter oil from China, but it doesn't really affect China. There's already, because China itself has a huge expansion of energy consumption. There was already some Chinese industry were pushing for the ban even before Trump called for additional tariff, because they say, hey, we need those biodiesel ourselves. We need those. Why are we exporting them to the United States? We could retain those within our country. So again, Trump administration have very little cards to play here. That's why they've been acting very shrill right now. And now that trade war coincides with the government shutdown. So everything is going great.
You want to hear shrill?
Trump is my president. Again,
you want to hear shrill of your president? Listen to this. Trump goes nuclear with this question, and you have to think, why are you behaving this way with somebody asking your basic question?
Question is, what do you have to say to U.S. farmers who feel that the deal is benefiting Argentina more than it is them, as they are
Argentina's fighting for its life, young lady. You don't know anything about it. They're fighting for their life. Nothing's benefiting Argentina. They're fighting for their life. You understand what that means? They have no money. They have no anything. They're fighting so hard to survive. If I can help them survive in a free world, I happen to like the president of Argentina. I think he's trying to do the best he can, but don't make it sound like they're doing great. They are dying.
To be fair, the woman didn't say anything about Argentina balling, right? She just said, how do you feel about the fact that this is helping Argentina farmers over U.S. farmers? And again, it's ironic that the libertarian president in Argentina is getting government subsidies from the United States in order to keep the government afloat at the behest or at the detriment of American farmers. Do you know there were videos of American farmers praying to Jesus because they didn't think that the U.S. government cared about them as a result of the policies that the Trump administration was effectively going with? And now that the government is shut down, the money that they were getting, the crumbs, up in smoke. That's real.
Yeah, I mean, the neoliberalism has always been, in practice, has always been socialism for the rich and capitalism for the poor. I mean, that has been always it's been practice. The Milei is supposed to be the savior, the God savior for Argentina to rescue it from its whatever policies, Peronist policies, right? To introduce sanity, economic sanity, but he at the end of the day he still need a bailout from Trump. And again, it's never about the little people. It's never about Joe six packs in Ohio or Michigan,
or those farmers.
This is all about exactly.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
I mean, if any farmers getting a bailout, it's going to be the corporate farmers, right? Mm-hmm. Because they're ones who have the access to the Washington lobby and to the easy money. So
yeah, my heart goes out to those farmers. I felt bad for them. I mean, the notion that you're sitting in church praying to God because your government screwed you over, and then when a basic question is effectively saying, hey, looks like you're screwing over the farmers for Argentina, he flips out. Hey, young lady, you don't know what you don't know anything about Argentina. They're fighting for their lives. Okay, Trump. So every other country that's fighting for his life is going to get a U.S. bailout at the expense of some kind of U.S. industry. That statement is outrageous. Like, Trump got in on this notion of MAGA, make America great again. She's asking him a question based on, this looks like you're making another country great again at the expense of the U.S. And he loses it. I guess my point is, to your point, that is a desperate administration who knows they are under pressure on this very specific angle of how on earth are we going to deal with the issue of China? Because
it's totally unnecessary. Yep. And it's totally unnecessary. Trump's the one who initiated this trade war. China did not want this trade war. In fact, China has repeatedly said, we do not want the trade war. Trade war is bad for everybody around. But if you're going to force this on us, we're going to fight you to the end. I mean, that has been the Chinese position from the very beginning. They hold the door for negotiation open, but they refuse to be bully on the on negotiation table, like back during the Biden administration, during the Anchorage meeting, the Chinese representative has said, United States is in no position to dictate terms to China from a position of strength. I mean, U.S. is just finding out right now.
Yeah. See, what I got out of this, I got out of the two things. A, China is effectively asserting we are a peer. Period.
Yes.
You're not going to treat us otherwise. And so when the U.S. says, okay, well, we're going to charge your ships when you go to port, China turns around, we're going to charge your ships when we go to port. We're peer. We're equals. If you're going to pass sanctions on us, we're going to pass tariffs on you. If you're going to, basically, they are looking at this in a one-to-one, this kind of escalation ladder where they remain even and equal. I guess, do you think the U.S. is going to get the hint that, okay, we're dealing with a peer? And let me ask you another question. Do you think the U.S. already knows that? There's some people on Twitter who argue that the U.S. is withdrawing from China because it knows that it's dealing with a peer, and it doesn't necessarily want to escalate to some kind of larger war. Give me your take on that.
Well, that has been my position. I mean, there's really no U.S.-China competition. That has been made clear to me with my every trip to China. There really no U.S.-China geopolitical competition. I mean, competing in what? In providing quality of life to average citizens? I mean, China has done far better a job. And in terms of building public infrastructure, there's no competition. Right now, what they're talking about competing with China is they're talking about, all spectrum dominance. But the time for all full spectrum dominance is over. I mean, that ship has sailed. But unfortunately, a certain section of the U.S. elite is still stuck between the first and the second stage of the 5-step grieving cycle. Right? They're going from denial to anger, back to denial, and back to anger again. But on the other, but some are quietly. I mean, if you look at the strategic posture, they already start to admitting, we got to pull back for the forward deployment in Western Pacific against China is not sustainable. Because we have vast distance of the Pacific to cross to try to fight China in China's neighborhood. Oh, by the way, recently China just launched their first 5th generation aircraft launch from electromagnetic catapult on their latest aircraft carrier, which is a feat. It's a first, not just for China, but for the world, because even up to today, USS 404, the most advanced nuclear-powered aircraft carrier in U.S. arsenal, still hasn't been able to launch a F-35 successfully from its electrical magnetic catapults, right? And so U.S. is already falling behind, even technologically, even in hard power. So they're going to have to. Yeah, I mean, like as you already mentioned, when U.S. military is depending on China for supplying its parts and critical minerals, it's not realistic to fight China in a real war. Right now, we are just seeing kind of the last. How do I say? They always accuse China of trying to save face. I think United States right now trying to put a brave face on the American decline. And they're flipping out because China is not expected. China is not supposed to retaliate, right? China was just supposed to take this sitting down. But now that China has retaliated, U.S. has no countermeasures, and they are panicking because of that. That's why they're making all these bold, crazy statements about China and how they're going gung-ho. But the more shrill the sound, that means more desperate their situation have become.
Yeah, agreed. When Democrats were saying that Trump was going to shoot Kamala Harris in the face or shoot Liz Cheney, I was like, okay, you guys, something is obviously wrong. you don't go nuclear unless something is clearly wrong in this situation. And yeah, that's the way it feels. It feels like they are so over the top. I mean, initially when Trump, if you remember when he first got in, it was the tariff war. It was him going to Australia, South Korea, Japan, saying, hey, you guys are willing to die for America. And that seemed to have been walked back a bit. It seems, and you correct me if I'm wrong on this seems less likely to escalate to war and remain in the context of an economic struggle where the U.S. is recognizing on some level, okay, the industrial base obviously belongs to China. Our ability to attack China without it going nuclear seems to be non-existent, short of some kind of nuclear strike, which has its own issues associated with it. Yeah, it does seem that they are.
Well,
it just be clear, when I say this, I don't mean that the U.S. is giving up on primacy. I don't mean that. I just mean it seems to be recognized on some level. Yeah, they're dealing with a peer. Give me your take on that, because you were laughing when I said giving up on primacy. That wasn't the case.
Right. I mean, if you look at the U.S. backup plan now for competing with China, they're basically putting all their eggs on AGI. Right. This coincides with the kind of tech bro takeover of the White House. With Peter Thiel back, JD Vance, and all these tech bros getting their claws into Washington. Palantir right now is embedded with the U.S. government, and you just recently had a Palantir CFO doing a very hawkish talk on China, and now the whole logic of the semiconductor sanction on China, which started this whole trade war, was to cripple China's progress in AI, to slow it down. So U.S. will produce Terminator and Skynet first, and China will be screwed. Once we get AGI, it's game over. We'll take over, and China will be relegated to the dustbin of history. But increasingly, that doesn't look like the case. This is why you're seeing Palantir top guys starting to come out very aggressively against China. First you have the DeepSeek moment when China say, you know what, if we don't have the compute, we'll just make our software more efficient, right? We'll cut down the bloatware and utilize what we have. And that's essentially the Huawei approach as well. Huawei said, okay, so yes, you are limiting our ability to manufacture advanced semiconductors. You know what? That's fine. We don't need, so maybe we don't have as powerful GPU unit on our disposal. We'll just use more. We'll use parallel processing. We have a whole bunch of supercomputers all linked together. We'll achieve the similar results. And this is why, I don't think China's AI development is even behind anymore. This is why they're realizing, at the same time, U.S. is blowing a gigantic AI bubble. If you look at the stock market, the stock market is very top heavy. Most of S&P 500 is in the tech stocks, and there's tons of money being bet on AI development. A lot of money is going to data centers. But at this time, that's so far, those data centers and the AIs in US have produced very little to justify the gargantuan amount of investment. But they're still trying to blow up this AI bubble. Say, oh, don't worry, we just need a few more years. AGI is just around the corner, and then it's going to solve all the problems, and we can fire all the white-collar workers. We don't need workers anymore. We're going to have robots working 24/7, and it's going to make us shit tons of money. It's going to justify all this investment. But whereas in China, they're actually using AI to do useful stuff like manufacturing, like robotics. China dominates the fields of robotics. So it's going to look pretty ugly when that AI bubble do burst in United States, when people realize, okay, there's no way we can justify $500 billion for Stargate project. On top of that, it's on a very quickly infrastructure, because to build all those data centers, they need a lot of electricity. And guess what happened? The U.S. electric generation hasn't grown for 20 years. It's flat. So when you build all these data centers, they are eating into the electricity usage for average civilian use. This is why you are seeing electricity price going up in the United States, because they're diverting all this electricity to the data centers instead of building more capacity. This is where China has another advantage. China is literally paving high altitude desert where they get a lot of exposure from the sun with solar panels. And solar is now currently the cheapest way for electricity generation, because once you set up the solar panels, you don't need to burn additional fuels. You don't need to burn more coal or gas or oil to get the electricity. You just wait for the sun to come out. And China has just made leaps and bounds in battery technology. So they just CATL, one of the largest battery maker in the world, they just came out to announce they're making giant leap in the solid battery development, which is they're going to using sodium ion battery, which is much more, and that's going to drastically reduce the battery price. It will make storage of solar energy much more affordable. So China is doing all the right thing right now, and they're not putting all the eggs in one basket either. They're building out. When I went to Xinjiang, I saw desert covered with wind farms and solar farms, and China is also building new nuclear facilities. They're doing the fastest nuclear reactor build out in the world. So they have abundant energy in China. The electricity, the energy consumption, the energy is cheap in China. And if you think about it, our civilization, eventually everything, including AI, whatever, everything runs on energy, on the price of energy. When you have cheap energy, that's how you're gonna compete. This is how you're gonna thrive. And whereas Trump, because he had to appeal his traditional support, he has put everything on big oil now. Right, he gone everything big oil. He scrapped all the financial subsidies for sustainable. Why there was a little hiccup between his relationship with Elon Musk. So right now, United States is not. It doesn't have the infrastructure, electricity generation grid to support the kind of rollout of data center that's needed to support their insane Stargate project. All that, which means the public had to eat it. Public have to eat it in terms of high electricity prices all across the country. Again, that's how they're competing with China, quote unquote, competing with China. This is why I said there's really no competition. Chinese people are living best of their lives right now.
It's worse than that, Carl. I mean, as bad as you put it, it's worse than that. I had a conversation with Dr. Warwick Powell, and he wrote this article where he was talking about how the U.S. is trying to do two things, and it can't accomplish really either because of the energy process and the energy grid in the United States and the amount of energy it would take to do it. And he was pointing out Donald Trump wants to bring back manufacturing to the United States, and Donald Trump wants to expand on AI, both of which are energy-rich processes, meaning you need a huge amount of energy for both of these things. And he was going into the numbers about how much energy you would need for like one. And like these laughable plans that they were talking about in regards to expanding their energy sector and expanding their energy system. It was like you were able, for example, to get, let's say, X amount of megawatts over the course of 20 years. And you're trying to get a third of that in 2. It was something like that. It was something like so out of whack with the reality of how we've been able to get energy that this is just laughable. Add to that this idea of electric cars. If you remember, the American grid wasn't even sufficient in order to do just electric cars. Not talking about AI, not talking about industry being brought back, just electric cars by themselves. The plan that Biden wanted was like all of the cars be electric by 2050 or something like that. And we weren't even up to snuff on that. So it's like, yeah, the point that you're making is right. Like, we're trying to do heavy industry or trying to bring those back in the States, which is, again, a question. I don't think it's going to take place. Trump's going to be there for 3 years. And we're trying to do AI and be a leader on AI. And as you point out, everybody's electric prices are going up. And what I think people miss, even if you want to buy toilet paper, it takes energy to make it, and it takes energy to transport it. Both of those go into the cost. Look at Europe. Look at where Europe is going through. That's because of energy. Everything else went up. Their businesses were closing and everything else because they don't have the energy to supplement those businesses at the price point that they need for it. So you are absolutely right. It seems they believe in magical things.
Yes, and it's magic. They're believing U.S. will win by default because magic.
Magic. Hashtag magic. What do they call it? MacGuffin. MacGuffin is going to help us win this thing. Yeah, I don't quite get it. Do you think they're going to be able to settle this? Like that ultimately Trump's ego is going to be put in the check? He's going to say, okay, I'm going to come up with a deal. We're going to win this deal. I think it's more interesting. What is it that the U.S. even wants? I mean, I know they've been complaining China's not buying our soybeans. Those bastards. They're hurting our farmers. But that just seems very narrow as a thing to actually have a tariff war over, a fight over. What do you think that the U.S. ultimately wants?
Well, I mean, ostensibly, Trump is saying, oh, this is about trade balance. Well, trade balance, if you worry about trade balance, you better start selling to China things that China actually want to purchase, like chips, like GPU chips. But they're not doing that. They're putting more restriction. This is actually what triggered the latest China expanded export control on critical minerals, because after the talk in Geneva and then London, there was supposed to be a trade truce. I said before that was a ceasefire. That was not a resolution of the trade war. So, but U.S. violated that ceasefire by putting out more restrictions on Chinese semiconductor companies. And so after that, China says, hey, if you're not playing good faith, then sorry, we're going to tighten our grip on your balls. We're going to tighten the grip on the critical minerals supply chain. And this is why Scott Bessent is screaming right now. And because they have no answer for that. They have no answers for that. And China is, the thing is, the Chinese culture and American culture is different in the way that U.S. politics are about talks, all about bravado. You gotta talk. You have to have a loud voice. And China is about get the result, right? They understand what needs to be done to get from point A to point B, and so they're applying the maximum pressure right now with the leverage they have. But as far as whether Trump will have to come to terms, we can always count on Taco Tuesday, Jamar. Taco Tuesday is always around the corner. I mean, this is a president who can change his mind in a tweet in 24 hours. So I fully expect that will happen. And but this is not good for the United States. He's destroying the credibility of U.S. all across the board. He's destroying any kind of faith of the American vessel in the kind of the U.S. empire system. He already made it clear. This is the U.S. empire set up for the benefit of U.S. It's not for you Europeans and Japanese and Koreans. You have to serve us, and these are the costs. You have to bear the cost. So this is just going to accelerate the multipolarity. But Europe. Man, Europe is kind of lost case. They're embarrassing. They are really I mean, their leaders really I don't know how they got into position they're in right now. And for example, Dutch, they dutifully comply when U.S. threatened to put the Dutch firm Nexperia on sanction list if they don't kick out the Chinese CEO and essentially nationalize the company, seize it from the Chinese parent company. So the Dutch did that. I mean, Dutch is in a hard place, but they would not have been in the situation they're right now if they at least consulted with the Chinese first. They could have just gone to the Chinese, say, hey, look, U.S. is putting a lot of pressure on us over this. We don't want to lose the jobs over closing of this plant. So we're going to have to do something to make Trump happy. What do you think we can do to, also, take care of your needs? But they haven't done that. So by Dutch seizing control of Nexperia, it just showed the Chinese that these guys, the Dutch is just a very pliant puppy dog of U.S. And there's a very famous saying in China called 杀鸡给猴看, you kill the chicken to frighten the monkey. The Dutch is a chicken right now.
What?
you kill the chicken
China is the monkey. That's hardcore.
Yes, you to make an example, Dutch is going to be made an example of because look, look, Netherlands, you are not United States, right? China have very, they don't need to think twice about retaliating against you. Like US, there's still a lot of things at stake, and US is still a big power, big regional power. Who do you think you are, Netherlands, trying to seize a Chinese company like that? And this is why they are gonna face the consequence right now. And one of the consequences is Nesperia, most of their semiconductor product is being consumed by China. 80% of their product is being exported to China. In fact, that's actually what made their company profitable again, because they were going bankrupt in the 2020s, and then the Chinese parent company Wintech came in, bought them out for billions of dollars, putting a lot of investment in research and development. And then they have discovered the Chinese EV market to sell the semiconductors to the Chinese EV makers. That's what turned their profitability around and made them profitable. And now Dutch say, okay, thank you for all your investment. Now we're gonna take the company back. I mean, no, Chinese not gonna say that's cool. I mean, that also jeopardized any future Chinese investment in EU. If any Chinese foreign direct investment into Europe can just be seized by a government like that under a very dubious, because the Dutch justification for seizing companies, they cited a clause basically for wartime provision, right?
Right.
I mean, like, what are you doing? You think you're at war with China right now? Well, okay. Well, you're gonna feel some wrath. You're gonna have to face some consequences. I mean, this is why the German automakers are crying right now, because they were depending on the semiconductors supply chain that was provided by Nesperia, and now with Chinese sanction on Nesperia, that's gonna jeopardize all the semiconductor supply for the German automakers. So maybe Dutch government is playing 5D chess. Maybe they're just out to screw the Germans. They're like, okay, we really hate the German auto industry. we're gonna burn them over. But this is bad for Europe, man. This is really bad.
And I guess this could be the last question. Is China still going to do business with Europe, knowing full well that this can happen in a heartbeat? I mean, Europe is about to seize Russian assets, like billions, hundreds of billions of dollars. And now, on a whim, they just stole a Chinese company. I mean, yeah, they're paying for it, but still, just the idea that they're willing to do something like that under U.S. pressure is pretty astonishing. What about the rest of Chinese companies in Europe? How is this going to affect those?
I mean, Europe, the time for strategic autonomy is now, because first, what the European leader has done is going fully along with US on this proxy war in Ukraine against Russia. Yes. So they cut themselves off from cheap Russian energy, right? Yeah. That's one of the main reason for the deindustrialization of Germany right now, is because they're now moving to United States, where at least the energy, particularly gas, is cheaper. And now they're cutting themselves off from their largest export market. I mean, first you cut yourself off from cheap energy, and now you're going to spite your best customer. I mean, Europe is being cannibalizing by United States left and right, and their leader are just going along willy-nilly. I mean, I expect some kind of popular revolt in Europe sooner or later. I mean, people are decrying the kind of the swing of the upsurge of the right-wing parties, but that is a reaction to the deteriorating condition in Europe. Because people will seek alternatives. If there's no strong left-wing opposition, they're going to swing to the right-wing opposition, and that's exactly what happened. Europe is not going in the right direction, and it's not going to go to a very good place until their leaders finally grow some backbone and tell United States, look, we have to do what we need to do to survive here. Now we're getting killed, right?
Yeah, to F off. Do you think that was the point, though? I'm sorry, I know it's the last question, but I'm curious on this one. Do you think that the entire point of U.S. policy was to sever or to break the world into two, to create these poles in a sense of saying, okay, we're going to sever you off from Russia? But Tony Blinken wrote this book, Pipeline Wars. And then just so happened, Nord Stream blows up. And you seem to get this thing of bifurcating the world into two, whether it was intentional or whether it was accidental. I guess my question, the last question, is: do you think it was intentional?
Well, I mean, the whole point of NATO, as they say, is to keep Russia out, to keep American in, and to keep the Germans down. And that's what this is. NATO is function. It's not a bug; it's a feature. And right now, it's the problem with I mean, that you're saying whether it's intentional. I think it is in part because they saw all these elite, they're still fighting the last war. They're thinking, hey, Cold War 1.0, we won that. We know how the script goes. We just divide the world into two camps, the Western camp and the East, and then we will triumph because they will collapse. This is why the China collapse narrative has been persistent for so long. They're just waiting with glee for China to collapse for like last 20, 30 years. And that hopium and copium will only go, production will only go higher. That's the only production that's going sky high in the West right now. But it's not the problem is, it's never the same. The condition is not the same. China is not Soviet Union. Right. In fact, China is a lot more economically stronger than United States currently. I mean, I have stressed this again and again. If you play a World War II scenario, China will be in the position of United States in 1941. United States in the position of Empire of Japan in 1941. That is a power differential. I mean, unfortunately, that hasn't completely seeped into the consciousness of the Western elite right now. Like I said, they're still bouncing between the first two stages of 5-step grieving process: anger, denial, back to denial, back to anger. I mean, yeah. we need to get to depression at some point. We need to get
so we can change.
Depression.
Yeah, we need to make it through.
Yeah.
Carl, you are awesome, man. I'm so glad that you're back. I'm so glad that you had a really good time on your trip. You were great, and the audience loves you. Carl Jha, host of Silk and Steel podcast, focused on China, surrounding regions, and their history, culture, and politics. You can follow Carl on Twitter at Carl Jha. You can follow his podcast on Twitter at Steel Silk. Letter N. You can subscribe and support the podcast on patreon.com/silk and steel. Carl, you are awesome, man. Thank you for this. I really appreciate it. You be safe, okay?
Thank you. Anytime, Jamar.
Excellent. All right. And I see my man in the background. We are joined with the legend, Ted Rall. Ted Rall is a political cartoonist, syndicated columnist. You can find him with the one and only Manila Chan on TMI, Too Much Information, at 10 a.m. How you doing, Ted? You doing okay today?
I'm good. Monday morning, up and at 'em.
Yeah, man. Monday mornings are rough. Monday mornings are rough. I agree. I watched, and I guess there are two things. One, the No Kings protests, and two, the Mandani debate against Cuomo and the other gentleman. I've never seen a man eat another man live like this. And I mean, all of Cuomo's weaknesses were just put on display for that debate. In fact, let's go there first. That one is funny to me. This is one of the attack lines that came up. There were a few that were just brutal, and Cuomo just sit there and took it. But this is
governor who sent seniors to their death in nursing homes. That's the kind of experience that's on offer here today. If I don't have an experience, I make up for an integrity. What you don't have an integrity, you could never make up for an experience.
Damn. Damn. That is rough. That is rough.
It's rough. It is definitely a prepackaged line.
It is.
Like he thought of this one. But you know what? He's very quick on his feet. And I always appreciate that in a politician. It happened to land well. Maybe because it was delivered really quick. A lot of prepackaged lines are kind of like, how there's certain film directors who like linger on their scene. Look at my beautiful scene. Let me make you look at my beautiful scene instead of trusting the audience to be like, wow, that's a cool scene. Did I just see that? And a lot of politicians like Kamala Harris, when she said, I was that girl, she was like, I was that girl on the bus. Instead of just sort of like, I was that girl on the bus. That would have been, just like letting it roll off. It's all about the delivery. Mamdani, obviously, he grew up with a brilliant film director mother. He obviously understands like delivery of language, and he definitely no question, he outperformed Andrew Cuomo.
Yeah.
I don't understand how you can be in your late 60s, having lived and breathed politics your entire life the way Andrew Cuomo has, to have been governor of an important state like New York. Obviously he's an intelligent man. His father was a brilliant politician. His brother's a moron, but that's different. It's like, how is he so bad at this? I mean, this should be something that so I sometimes in the past, I've forgotten about an interview that I had with someone in a very different time zone. 5 o'clock in the morning, the phone rings. Oh fuck, who's calling me at 5 in the morning? It's like, oh shit, it's that interview in Australia. And so they're like, hi Ted, you ready to be on in 60 seconds? And you're like, yeah. And then it's like immediately, no coffee, out of bed, I can talk about like, say, the Mamdani debate. How come he can't do that? How come? Yeah. And he's not the only one. I don't want to just pick on him. But like, why can't like really experienced politicians, why are they not better at this?
But how do you be, if you're a Cuomo and you have, you've gotten all those grandmas killed, you're sending all those people to their nursing home to their deaths. I'm just mean literally he did. Right?
Yeah, literally he did. It's true. In
the most literal sense. This is not me being hyperbolic. This is what Cuomo literally did. He sent them to effectively a death center. On top of that, write a book about how awesome and brilliant you are. Right. You lie about the number of people that you killed in New York over the course of COVID.
You're grabbing ass like nobody.
And you're grabbing ass left and right. Mm-hmm. How do you be good at a debate when you are like just a target, like a massive target that somebody just needs to throw a dart at? How do you be good at that? I don't know how you be good at that. He shouldn't have been in this debate at all, frankly.
I guess the deal is that the only reason obviously he's a Nepo baby. That's the only reason he ever had this job, right? I mean, it's his last name. That's it, just like his brother. I mean, don't tell me that CNN can't do better than Chris. Don't tell me.
But there was a time where he wasn't known for grabbing ass, right?
Right.
Meaning there was a time where he didn't send those grandmas to their deaths, or where he wasn't grandstanding or COVID. Meaning there was a time where he didn't have these weaknesses.
That's true. Yeah.
Got him here.
Yeah, although maybe he always did. Like I think there is an effect of wallowing in privilege, and I don't mean like necessarily. Obviously, he has white privilege, but political privilege in this case. Yeah. And he's got power and some money, and I think when you live your entire life that way and you grew up that way, I mean, it's kind of crazy, right? I mean, he literally can drive across a bridge that's named after his father.
I know.
It's like when you have that level, I think it just it's hard not to become arrogant. And obviously he did.
But Jesus, who wants to put themselves through that perdition? Like, even here's another one where he goes after Cuomo for Netanyahu, of all things. This is Mamdani again. Put it in knife and Cuomo.
I want to be very clear. The occupation is a reference to international law and the violation of it, which Mr. Cuomo has no regard for since he signed up to the Benjamin Netanyahu legal defense team during the course of this genocide.
So a few things there, right? A, calling a genocide, good for you for that. Calling it occupation, again, good on you for that. And then pointing out, this guy's backing this genocide. Now, I saw a picture of, looks like 10,000 Jews, like Orthodox Jews with their hats and spirally hair and everything else in New York protesting what was happening in Israel.
Yep.
Is it true that Mamdani is safe in this argument? Like, meaning he is in a location that will effectively back him in this particular argument. Even Jews that are in New York will back him in this argument.
Well, the polls say yeah. He's got first of all, the vast majority of American Jews writ large are now more sympathetic to Palestine than Israel. That's a gobsmacking statistic. That number is only going to increase in the pro-Palestine direction as time goes on. And especially, once U.S. and other Western reporters go into Gaza and all the mass graves start to pop up and all the atrocities that Israel committed become better known, and it's going to, Israel's reputation, such as it is just gonna, go sub-zero. But here in New York City, the polls show that what's his name, Eric Adams, dropping out of the race. The fact that I had to say what's his name, the city mayor dropped out of the race in a Democratic city, a Democratic mayor. It really didn't affect Mamdani's polling significantly. I think he lost a point to Cuomo. Okay. That's big deal. He's ahead by 12 to 14 points. He has that point to spare. He'll probably get it back. I'm hearing, little birds inside the Mamdani campaign tell me that internal polling has them basically turning cartwheels. They would really like to hit 50%, even though this is now a three-way race, because they think it'll avoid the right-wing talking point that he was unable to achieve a majority instead of a plurality. Now they believe they are at 50%. So the latest polls these are internal polls, and they could be wrong, but they've, so far those polls have been reflective of the external polls. So the odds are within the next week or so, we're going to see those results hit. And, it's also one of those phenomena, Mamdani's one of those phenomena where people need to feel safe voting for him, right? So the more people who vote for him, there's a snowball effect. and that's clearly it. It's people hear from their friends like, oh, like my friend Ted's voting for, my friend Jamal's voting for him. Oh, they seem like they have a good head on their shoulders. Like, oh, maybe it's okay. I mean, and, frankly, he is a different looking candidate. I mean, not only is he Muslim, he's South Asian, but he's very young. Very young. We haven't had anyone nearly this young in my memory, right? I mean, Lindsey Graham was the mayor of New York City when I was a little kid. I didn't live here. Really? I mean, not Lindsey Graham, Mayor John Lindsay. Thank God we didn't have Lindsey Graham.
He's South Carolina. Right.
Yeah, Ed Koch was a fairly, not ancient, but certainly he wasn't 33 years old or 31 years old. And so it's just like there's just a, it feels a little weird to be voting for this guy, and we kind of need to know that it's going to be okay. Look, I don't think Mamdani would have stood a chance really at all if the opposition to him hadn't been just so lame. Pushing the establishment, pushing Adams and Cuomo up against him. I don't know what they were thinking. It's like, have you met any actual New Yorkers? Do you know where a subway station is? Could you go down into one? It's only $2.90, very cheap. You could go in and talk to some New Yorkers. Everyone would have told you you're out of your mind. Cuomo would have been an excellent candidate for governor, for mayor of New York City in 2021 or 2022. But that's not when the election's being held. And so, it's kind of like when John McCain ran for president in 1984 and, in 2004. And, people said, oh, he's past his expiration date. That's what we have here. So Cuomo is just past due.
Past his expiration date. Here's one more, and this is the last one, and I'm moving over the Kings after this one. Excellent. This is Mamdani hitting him over sexual harassment things, and I love this. I love this one. Come on.
Andrew Cuomo thinks it's all right to spend $60 million to fund his legal defense and accusations of more than a dozen women of sexual harassment. If I say we should spend the same amount of money on delivering cheaper groceries in this city or a pilot program, that is unfathomable. Andrew,
like, that's what I mean, man. The idea that taxpayer money is going to pay off Cuomo's grabbing ass legal fund.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, that's absurd, right? And he's kind of put out, he's like, look, I'm trying to spend this money on ensuring people can eat. He's trying to spend this money on defending himself from him grabbing ass and his inability to stop from grabbing women's ass. Yeah, that makes him, it's a stinging point. It's a stinging point.
It is.
Give me your take.
You know, I mean, it's almost like nobody. You know, it's political malpractice. I mean, imagine, let's say you and I were hired to be consultants for the Cuomo campaign. What would we do? You and I we'd put on a big pot of coffee. We sit in a conference room with a whiteboard, and we try to anticipate all the biggest attacks that would come against our candidate, right?
Right.
What's the first one you're going to put up there? Ass grabber, right? And then, like, what?
Killing grandma.
Using public funds to defend ass grabbing as a subset of that, right? Well, so how are you going to defend that? Okay, well, one of the things you do is you can't claim, you can't allow your candidate to complain about excessive spending on anything else because you're already wasting taxpayer money. So you immediately tell the governor, the former governor, sorry, you know, sir, you're just going to have to drop that grocery store issue.
How? How do you tell them that? You're fighting a socialist, right? And what is the attack line always against socialists? You just want to spend government money.
Right.
How do you keep Cuomo from making that case that is a normal standard attack line against socialists?
Well, you just tell them you're going to lose. You're going to have your ass handed to you. I mean, look, if I was managing Cuomo's campaign, I would have told him, listen, you know, you can't play against Mamdani. You're not going to beat him on his own territory. What you've got to claim is that this race is about experience. It's a very, very hard job, and that you know the ins and the outs, and that the relationship with Albany is absolutely crucial to the mayor of the city of New York. And no one can argue that you don't know Albany inside and out. And basically, New York City needs a firm hand. It needs an adult at the helm. And I'm an adult. And also, it's a rough and tumble town, and I'm a rough and tumble guy. And Mamdani is a cute little bunny rabbit, but he's not going to be able to deal with like the sharks, you know, in Albany, and for that matter, in City Hall. You know, I think that's a more credible argument, don't you, Jamal?
Yeah, no, I get your point. It's just the typical attack line against socialists is he's going to tax and spend. He's going to spend so much money. Oh, he wants to spend money on these.
By the way, New Yorkers don't care about that. New Yorkers are not fiscal conservatives. We're not conservatives of any kind. Only 11% of New York City residents are registered Republicans, and they're not MAGA Republicans. I mean, some are, but not most of them. I mean, they're sort of old-fashioned Jerry Ford Republicans. So, I mean, the term Rockefeller Republican comes from Nelson Rockefeller, former governor of New York, who was a liberal Republican, right? Pro-choice, pro-gay, etc. That's how. I mean, there's just kind of aren't. New York City. I'm going to put a point on it, right? New York City is a place that if you go to a public space, a party, a diner, a bar, you can safely talk shit about Republicans and Trump and assume that everyone else agrees with you. And if they don't, they're the weirdos and the exception. It's the opposite of walking into a shit kicker bar in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and like you can talk shit about any Democrat or Joe Biden or Kamala or Adam Schiff, anyone you want, and assume that everyone agrees with you. And if there's the weird liberal in the corner, he knows to be quiet, right? It's like that. So, I mean, look, this election, it's been over for months. I mean, we talked about this, I mean, it's like, it was over really immediately. It was over the week before the primary. And when I saw the numbers coming together, and it's so funny. The New York Times made Mamdani the nominee. I can't tell you how many New Yorkers I've talked to. They all say the same thing. I wasn't going to vote for that guy. He was too young. But then when I saw how, like, he was driving the elites, like at the New York Times editorial page, insane. And then I got the mailers from Michael Bloomberg that were like racist and they were terrified of him. I was like, wow, he's got my vote now. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, he ate Cuomo alive in that debate. He ate him alive.
Yeah, he did.
I want to go to the No Kings protests. I got to be honest. I didn't notice this until I think it was like this morning when I saw some of the pictures and the images that were coming out on this. We have, I don't know if this is going to be a new trend in American protests, like dressing up like frogs and dinosaurs and aliens. Here's another one: a chicken, Statue of Liberty, hot dog. I don't know what this woman is on the right. A dead chicken. Here's another one: a dinosaur costume. Roman gladiator, shark. I think that's one of my favorites: the alien and the shark. Don't take their bait. And all of this is coming out of Portland, right? Where you have all of these frogs and whatnot. And one guy was complaining that the frog costume was taken. He was like, "Those bastards! They increased the price. Like, you couldn't get the frog costume." Give me your take on this before I say anything. Just give me your.
Well, look at you. You're wearing a suit and a hat. Look at me. I'm wearing a stained navy blue T-shirt, right? What is it? We obviously don't care for like clown get-ups, okay? I mean, obviously. I mean, I look, whenever I see the pictures of the protests from the civil rights era, where it's finely dressed young men and women, women in their Sunday best wearing like sundresses, or men in like skinny ties, narrow lapels, marching with the signs that say, I am a man. I'm like, now that's what protesting looks like. I mean, this is about humanizing yourself and making yourself relatable to other people who are watching on TV and thinking like, oh, I like that. Those people look like my kind of people. They look reasonable. Look, the animal costumes are funny. And I guess if you think that a political demonstration is a place that you get together with your friends to have a good time and validate each other, then No Kings was a raging success. If you think that a political demonstration is a protest that issues a demand or a set of demands for actual political change, then it was a complete failure. And I think where I stand from what I just said. There were no demands whatsoever. Literally, the demand for No Kings was show up and have a good time. Come every 2 to 3 months, show up and have a good time. As I said, and I felt, sometimes you have a thought and you're like, oh, that's you feel good about yourself. You're like, I feel pretty clever. I thought about this the other day. Donald Trump and the Republicans, they're all day, every day. The anti-Trump resistance is every 2 to 3 months on a Saturday. What do you think? I wonder why Trump is winning, right? I mean, honestly, like it's like, oh, we're fighting fascists. You're not fighting anyone. And no one's fighting the fascists, right? The Democrats aren't doing it. And after all, and I'm tired of having people defend this and say, oh, this was not a Democratic Party-oriented, organized activity. Yes, it was. Yes, every single group is an affiliate of the that was involved in this was a Democratic front organization, including the labor unions that participated and groups like the ACLU. These are not the ACL. This is not yesterday. Your grandmother's ACLU, where they defended the Nazis in Skokie. They're Democrats, and there's nothing wrong with being like, hey, we be Democrats. Let's go march around and be Democrats and say everyone should vote Democratic. But it's not a meaningful, it's not a meaningful event. It doesn't. There's, like the White House press secretary said. So, she's right.
Yeah, she said we don't care.
I mean, look, it ain't working. This is what they've been doing since 2017, except then they stopped from 2021 to 2025, even though Biden pursued many of the same policies as Trump did in his first term. I mean, even stuff that you don't even think about, Trump got rid of home deductions on property tax in the blue states, not the red states. Biden didn't restore that when he came in. I mean, so the point, even on the little things, and obviously, Biden and Trump both had the same, pro-Israel, pro-genocide policies. They're the same. They're the same. And it's like, so, it's kind of like, who the fuck are you people? So I thought it was I have total contempt for this, because when I see 7 million people marching, all I can think of is, what a fucking waste right? It's sort of like when I see a Marvel movie. When I see a Marvel movie with a $500 million budget, I think to myself, or with $50 million budget, whatever, I'm like, think of all the great independent movies that Werner Herzog could have made with that money, right? Like 1,000 movies. When I see 7 million Americans marching through the streets, I'm like, imagine if those same 7 million people had taken their energy, their time, and their money and like gotten together in their communities and started building an actual, real anti-fascist opposition, grassroots from the ground up, outside of the two major parties. We'd be on our way, you know. I mean, we'd be in business in sooner rather than later. And imagine, like, let's amp it up. Let's say they met every week, once a week, you know, like just watch one fewer TV show, one fewer sporting event, once a week. Well, I mean, now you have a revolution. You can overthrow the government. I mean, but like, you know, so I just see it as like a total waste of time. It's a distraction. It's sheepdogging. It's what they accuse Bernie Sanders of, you know, bringing in, you know, the left, the real left, into the Democratic Party. This is sheepdogging, and it's really effective at promoting the two-party system and the Democratic Party. But it's not going to it's not going to save your neighbor from being deported by ICE, or your U.S. citizen neighbor from being beaten up by ICE because, you know, they had spent a little too much time at the tanning salon. I mean, it's just, you know, it's not going to do anything. I don't know. What did you think?
I opened my show sounding very much like you. I said this seemed to be, I'm not going to denigrate 7 million people coming together, but
no, they're motivated by, they have good hearts.
Yeah,
what's
but
lacking is
it's like there's no demand. I mean, I think my biggest thing was like, what are you demanding? That Trump doesn't become a king? It's like, okay.
We don't have monarchy.
Nice.
Monarchy's not a threat, okay? Like, the threat is authoritarianism, and it's like the threat is ICE and militarization of American cities. The threat is regime change against Venezuela and Colombia. You know, those are threats. I mean, think about like when we were just a little younger, right? Like we all knew, like, when people marched in 2003, what was the demand? Don't invade Iraq. Hands off Iraq. Easy to understand, right? Where's the demand here? You know, Donald Trump is the legitimate president of the United States. He was elected fair and square. No one sane disputes that. So it's like, you know, oh, well, he wants to be a king. You know, I mean, to me, this just feeds into the, you know, a lot of right-wing narratives, you know, and I mean, obviously they have their stupid talking points, like these days all over X, just the last day or two. Look at how old and white all of these crowds were. And they show pictures from, you know, communities that are all, you know, very old and white. And I'm like, well, yeah, you know, if you, in those communities, that's what you're going to get. Trust me, there were lots of people, you know, lots of black people and lots of young people at No Kings in New York. I guarantee you that. You know, I saw them. I didn't go, but I saw them on the subway and stuff. Yeah. And like the point is that like that's not the, you know, it's also coming from the Republicans, a ridiculous talking point. Have you ever seen an RNC? Like, you've never seen older or whiter people in your life, or for that matter, like you know, a joint session of Congress. Look at the Republican side, like, hello. Yes. So yes. I mean, it's like, hello. It's so dumb.
Yeah, I understood why they were wearing the costumes. I mean, they were trying to say, well, two things. One, hey, we're nonviolent. I'm in a frog costume.
Yeah, we're not dangerous. We're not the radical left. We're not.
Yeah, and
by the way, I have a serious problem with this.
Well, so do I, by the way. And one last point. I also think they were trying to show how absurd. Meaning, if I am breakdancing in a chicken costume, you standing there as a cop, both of us look ridiculous. Not just me in a chicken costume breakdancing, right? You're trying to make the opposition look absurd, and you're trying to say we're nonviolent.
But it's not working. It just makes you look like a fucking clown. And here's another thing. I mean, I have a serious problem with this. Like the left, I mean, liberals should not be dissing Antifa.
Agreed.
Antifa are the radical shock, and the Black Bloc are the radical shock troops of liberalism and the left. They are the left flank of the left, and you got to have that if you want to have any forward motion. That's where the energy and the peak come from, right? Like on the far right, on the Republican right, they don't diss their like Unite the Right, Charlottesville, far right, neo-Nazi Proud Boy people at all. They embrace them. They bring them into the fold. They give them pardons. They elevate them. They mainstream them because they know that the far right is giving them a lot of their ideas that they can sort of maybe moderate a little bit for mainstream consumption, and they validate the Republican Party. This is a huge thing that again, it's because it's a Democrat thing, and we, liberals at those marches should be fucking thanking God that Antifa is there, and they should be asking them to come more often.
No, Ted, that's the rub. Democrats do not want a quote-unquote mob. What they want are the sheepdog people into the party. There's a difference.
Yeah,
meaning from the Democratic perspective, they're like, so Kamala Harris will come out, you make Cory Booker coming out saying, hey, you guys are doing great. Yeah. But what they don't want are demands. Yeah, and Hillary Clinton, again. But what they don't want are demands, meaning they don't want 7 million people coming out saying, we demand X and Y. They don't want that. They want 7 million people coming out that has this kind of whiff of Democrat associated with it, where these people would get into the Democratic Party. Even if those people say, well, I'm not left or right. And then they're using a statement by Cory Booker. It's like, what the hell? Are you serious right now? Like, are you being serious? When you get that many Democratic politicians come out saying, hey, no kings, you guys are doing great, that should tell you something about no kings. I think that's the difference. I don't think Republicans are afraid or scared of, let's say, the people on the hard right making demand. Those are the same people that raided the Capitol out there fighting cops and putting cops in the ER. Like, let's put this in context, right? Trump got those people and gave them pardons. Well, Democrats are effectively allowing this castigation of Antifa, which is effectively a political witch hunt for a group that doesn't exist. Right. And they're acting as if, well, this is going to be isolated to a certain group. No, idiot, this is isolated to all of you also, because Antifa doesn't exist. Like the very act at the moment that these protests actually gain some level of steam, or if they indeed were going to gain some level of steam, or if they got on some level dangerous to the system itself, Antifa would be all of those people.
Well, and that's kind of like, but this is like a Martin Niemöller situation, right? I mean, first they came for Antifa, blah, blah, blah.
Yes. I guess my thing is Democrats don't want anything that would challenge Democrats, or that would, let's say, place demands on Democrats.
And they're playing the Republicans. They're playing the Republicans' game. I mean, ultimately they'll end up in the camps just the same, but they'll ride business class.
I would say Infinity Wars was worth every penny spent. I would say that. The scene of Captain America getting Thor's hammer, or Captain America saying "Avengers Assemble," or Iron Man at the very end, "I am Iron Man." Oh, that was so epic! It's so epic. But the money is well spent on those. The other movies, the other Marvel movies suck. Many of those suck. But that and the lead, that was.
I know. Yeah, we're going to disagree about that.
So you weren't a Marvel guy. You weren't a fan of the Marvel.
No, I mean the thing is, I have nothing against the idea, the concept. I mean, I grew up with all that stuff, and I'm a cartoonist. But I mean, the execution of so many of these movies is so leaden. It drives me crazy.
I agree with the woke stuff. Like they've oversaturated their product. Agreed.
Right,
and I think it fell off
even just like even just everything about it, the direction, the cinematography, the way they talk. It's a comic book. It's annoying to me.
It's a comic book. Oh, Ted, you've been a hard ass. You're like the old man on the bank saying, "You stupid kids, get off my yard."
During the week.
Ted, you're a great man. I really appreciate this, and I agree with your take on the Kings thing. I
just wrote my column this week. I don't know if, and I'm going to syndicate it in a day or two about No Kings and like why it's a total waste of time and things like this they do not work and cannot work and will not work, and there's just a distraction from what we need to be doing.
Yeah, when you get the Trump administration saying we don't care, that kind of tells you.
And they're not fronting. They don't care, and they shouldn't care. Again, I'd be the first to tell the president, yeah, you got nothing to worry about there.
Oh, one last thing before I let you go. Government shutdown. How long are you guys going to keep the government shutdown? I'll be coming back to America at some point. I'll need air traffic controllers to work.
Us guys. Well, Democrats are winning the shutdown.
You think so?
Oh, and let me just tell you, the Democrats are studying the calendar, right? November 1st is a key day. So
right.
in 11 days or so, you're going to have the first people outside of Medicare Medicaid, who are going to start getting their renewal notices for next year under Obamacare. Tens of millions of people. The rates they're going to see their new premiums, and they're going to be ridiculous. I mean, they're already ridiculously high for middle class people, but it's going to be insane. And for middle class and lower middle class and working class people, it's going to be like you're going to go from it was basically nothing to $700 a month, or it's going to go from $550 to $2,000 a month. So people are just not going to be able to afford health care anymore. That's going to start. Those letters are going to start coming in on November 1st. Democrats they got to sit tight. They're winning now that the polls are on their side, and it's only going to get better for them. And as Speaker Johnson can keep talking about like this is not a healthcare fight. It's a healthcare fight, and and Democrats are in a position they can't let this go. If they do, the Affordable Care Act is dead next year. It's finished effectively. It's still on the books, but effectively nobody's going to be covered by it. It's just not going to. It's a dead letter. So at that point, so I think Democrats are going to keep this going. I think Republicans are going to blink, and I think they're going to blink probably within 2 weeks.
But Trump and the Republicans don't seem to care. I mean, Trump is not even in the States, and
but the members of the House care. And
Johnson is not even in session.
They've been out of session for a month.
Yes,
and I think they're starting to sweat, and they're going to start worrying about the midterms. This really will be. I mean, it'll be hard. Democrats really are great at pulling defeat from the jaws of victory. Don't get me wrong, but it's going to be hard for them to fuck this up, because even if they don't run a single decent ad, people, it's very personal to not have health care anymore and to know why. People are going to go to the polls next year, and they're going to, even though the Republicans have completely fixed the game with redistricting, it may not matter. Basically, Democrats need a 5-point advantage nationally to retake the House. They're going to get it, if unless the Republicans blink. If the Republicans don't blink, they're really stupid. I think they will blink.
Wow. All right. Fair enough.
What the Republicans are going to do is they're going to renew the subsidies for 1 year. That's what they're going to do.
Oh, just punt it, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Ted Rall, political cartoonist, syndicated columnist. Ted, you are awesome. You can catch Ted at 10 a.m. on TMI. Too much information.
9 a.m. first.
Oh, it's 9 a.m. now.
9 a.m. Eastern time. We've got Deprogram with me and John Kiriakou, although John's out today, but he'll be back tomorrow.
Okay.
And then 10 a.m. with Manila Chand on TMI show.
Whew, that's a hell of a schedule, Ted.
Yeah, we're gonna. You and I have to talk. We have to sort of put it so that we can. We keep it straight from you to me, and then beyond,
and then back to you again.
Yeah, something like that. We'll figure it out.
Ted, thank you for this, man. And by the way, John Kiriakou is fantastic. So he's a great.
If he survives, he was out in Baja California getting attacked by tarantulas.
What?
Yeah, he's filming out in Baja California in Mexico for Jesse Ventura's movie. And
are you serious?
He was in an unair-conditioned, squalid resort, like where tarantulas are swarming inside. There were rattlesnakes, not inside apparently, but like swarms of mosquitoes eating him alive. It was very entertaining. I hope he's hasn't been exsanguinated by the time he returns.
He's a CIA agent. He knows how to deal with that shit.
I know.
He knows how to handle it. There's a CIA guy to deal with that stuff.
One thing.
Ted, thank you for this, man. You be safe, okay?
Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, Ted Rall, fantastic guest. Always appreciate Ted Rall. Jesse Ventura, holy hell. John did tell me, he was like, look, I'm going to be away for a while. I just assumed he didn't want to be on the show. Who knows? He was actually going to be away. So fair enough. Badass. John Kiriakou is a fantastic guest. So is Ted. Both of those guys are great. He said he's going to be off today, but apparently John is going to be back by 9, so that should be great. Ajamu Baraka is going to be on the show at 9 o'clock. What time is it? Do we have time? Yeah, we have time. Good. Ajamu Baraka is going to be on the show at 9 o'clock. So I'm looking forward to that. I don't think I've ever had him on my show, ever, in the history, ever. So it would be great to have a conversation with him and to have a conversation with him. Before I get to that, Zelensky had a horrible day on Friday. Now, I didn't get the opportunity to talk about this because this happened after the show, so I'm going to talk about it now. Zelensky had a horrible day, maybe one of the worst days in his life. It's fascinating in the way that this actually broke down. I initially, when this first came up about the whole Tomahawk thing, said to myself, and I think I even said it aloud on the show, I said, Trump is bluffing. This is nonsense. You don't have the ability to launch him. And if anything, you're trying to look for leverage. This is a search for leverage. And then the closer that we got to the meeting with Zelensky, I was like, okay, maybe this guy is going to give him, especially if the Russian response is muted. Meaning, if the Russian response is effectively, this is going to change our relationship, and that's it, then what the U.S. may come to an assessment of is, okay, well, they're going to be angry, but they're going to be pragmatic. They may beat the hell out of Ukraine some more. But ultimately, if it ever came up for a deal, they would still be open to a deal. So what is the downside to giving these missiles to Ukraine? Meaning, you could come to that assessment. And if you do come to the assessment in those terms of, well, Putin has always been pragmatic. We are literally attacking Russian oil. It is clear the United States is helping Ukraine to do that. And these guys are still saying that they're on the Alaska game plan. So maybe there's not going to be a hyperbolic response. And if there is not a hyperbolic response, then what's the downside? And so I started to come to the assessment of, okay, well, maybe Trump is going to give these missiles. Trump, out the blue, after talking to Putin, because he had a conversation with Putin out of the blue, comes out just before Zelensky comes, by the way. Meaning this is taking place just before Zelensky comes to the States. So if you're Zelensky, it is very possible, up until this moment, you thought, I'm getting Tomahawks, baby. I'm getting Tomahawks. Whether I can launch them or not, secondary to the point, I'm getting Tomahawks. It's going to alienate the Russians. But it shows that the U.S. is still invested. And whether I can launch them or not, at some point, it's a down payment on the United States effectively continuing to help us out. I'm getting Tomahawks. This is going to be a fantastic visit. My name is Zelensky. Let's go to D.C. That may be your thoughts. And then Trump comes out before you get there and says this.
But we need them. I mean, we talked about it a little bit, didn't say much, but I do say to you, we need Tomahawks for the United States of America, too. We have a lot of them, but we need them. I mean, we can't deplete for our country. So, they're very vital. They're very powerful. They're very accurate. They're very good, but we need them, too. We talked about.
So imagine, your name is Vladimir Zelensky. You just finished snorting 20 lines of coke, and you see that on Twitter. And I'm going to D.C. And for the last week or so, I had a good faith belief that I may actually be getting Tomahawks. So you get the situation where Zelensky comes, he sits down with Donald Trump, and the meeting is an utter and complete train wreck. Now, the meeting was not held in public. There were parts of it where they were together talking and everything else, but the meeting itself was held behind the scenes. Zelensky leaks the meeting to the Europeans because he immediately called the Europeans for comfort after the conversation apparently with Trump, where he didn't get what he wanted and his hopes were effectively dashed. When Zelensky came out to even give his speech after the meeting, he didn't even stand in front of the White House. He went out into the field like Lafayette somewhere in order to give this conversation to the press. Couldn't even stand in front of the White House. This is one of the scenes from that meeting, and I want to show you something in this scene. Zelensky, at some point, brought up, well, hey, if you give us the Tomahawks, we'll give you drone technology. Now, this is laughable. The U.S. has $1 trillion military budget. You are bankrupt as a country, and you're losing territory left and right. You're losing in manpower, and you're losing on the ground. Not to mention you're losing in air war. Why on earth would the United States need drones from you when we are giving you money and equipment hand over fist? Not to mention the Europeans. Take a look at this.
Would authorize some kind of an exchange where
yes, of course.
the US
Yes, we have proposition.
They're laughing. He says, yes, we have a proposition. And Trump looks at Vance and starts laughing. They go into a meeting. When they go into the meeting and they have the conversation, the meeting turns out to be a complete and utter train wreck. This is the way Financial Times reported took place. Trump urged Zelensky to accept Putin's term or be destroyed by Russia. Be destroyed. Now, again, what you need to think of is before this conversation, Donald Trump had a conversation with Putin on the phone that lasted 2.5 hours. And as I pointed out, what Putin probably got across to him is, if you do that, our response will be X and Y. Just know it. So when Trump comes out, what does Trump do? Look, we're not going to give the Tomahawks. And again, there may be two things that work. Either it was always a bluff, or two, it was a trial balloon where Donald Trump gets, I guess, the fear of God put in him by Putin in regards to Putin's response to what Trump told him about the Tomahawks. Whichever one it is, it boils down to the same thing. Currently, at this moment, it may be revisited at another time, Trump apparently backed out of giving the Tomahawks. And apparently there was a screaming match in the office with Zelensky, where Trump strongly got across to him, look, both sides need security guarantees, which apparently baffled Zelensky. Two, you need to accept the Russian deal or else you will be destroyed. After Zelensky pushed back, Donald Trump said something about, okay, well, we'll freeze the lines. What about freezing the lines? Freezing the lines of contact. Even this is not going to be acceptable. Now, the other part to this is right here. This is Financial Times. This is what Financial Times is reporting took place in the meeting based on quote unquote sources. Donald Trump urged Vladimir Zelensky to accept Russia's terms for ending its war in a volatile White House meeting on Friday, warning Vladimir Putin had said he would, quote, destroy, unquote, Ukraine if it did not agree. The meeting between the United States and Ukrainian president descended many times into a shouting match, with Trump, quote, cursing all the time, unquote, people familiar with the matter said. They added that the U.S. president tossed aside most of the front line in Ukraine, insisted Zelensky surrender the entire Donbass region to Putin, and reportedly echoed talking points from the Russian leader had made in the call a day earlier. Now, the issue with this is that whether you pull your troops out of Donbass or whether Russia takes it within a year or a year and a half or 6 months, Russia's going to take it. Period. Full stop. Regardless of Trump putting out in a tweet that Ukraine is winning, and he believes that if Europe keeps giving the money that Ukraine can take, obviously Trump doesn't believe that. Trump apparently tossed aside the maps that Zelensky had on the table, and because at that point I would imagine Trump knew they were nonsense, and effectively browbeat Zelensky. Trump came out of the meeting, and they asked Trump, hey, did you tell Zelensky to give up all of Donbass? This is Trump's response.
During that meeting, did you tell him he needed to cede all of the Donbass region to Russia?
No, we never discussed it. We think that what they should do is just stop at the lines where they are, the battle lines. You have a battle line right now. The rest is very tough to negotiate. If you're going to say, you take this, we take that, there's so many different permutations. So what I say is they should stop right now at the battle lines. Go home, stop killing people, and be done.
What do you think should happen with the Donbass region?
Let it be cut the way it is. It's cut up right now. I think 78% of the land is already taken by Russia. You leave it the way it is right now. They can negotiate something later on down the line.
Now, it was also pointed out that Witkoff went to Russia, gave a deal, basically the idea of a deal. Putin responded, and Trump never gave a response back to Putin's response. So there was something that was floating out there in the ether that the United States never ultimately responded to, and Trump, in a lust for some kind of leverage, goes on a campaign of effectively attacking Russian energy and Russian oil. All right. Donald Trump has a conversation with Putin. Donald Trump backtracks on the issue of the Tomahawk missiles. And after backtracking, effectively saying, I'm going to Budapest and I'm going to have a conversation with Putin after our familiars and the underlings work it out. All right. Something interesting, though, in the Financial Times piece. Accept the deal or be destroyed. Accept the deal or be destroyed. Now, Donald Trump is not saying that he said that, but what if he did? What if he did? Dr. Rall, a really good Russian analyst, one of the best, I would argue. Whether I agree with his take or not, he's very good. He's very thoughtful in the way that he gives his points of view. He came out and said, which on some level makes you think that Donald Trump may have told Zelensky that because of what Putin might have told Donald Trump. This is Dr. Rall. Listen to what Dr. Rall says about what his sources are telling him, or at the very least what he believes took place in that meeting based upon, let's say, some of the conversations taking place in Russian media.
The Russians have made serious threats, counter threats to the United States over the possible introduction of Tomahawks into Ukraine. I'll be very specific. On Russian state television 3 days ago, a host to a talk show who is actually very close to Putin, and it may be considered to be talking on behalf of Putin and saying things unofficially, which the Kremlin cannot say officially. And what he was saying is that if the Tomahawks are introduced, we will go to all-out war. We will declare war on Ukraine, and we will destroy the entire government. We will bomb them during the daytime so that all staff go down with the buildings, and we will then level Ukraine. That's pretty strong. Nothing like that has been said by Russia, and we may be certain that similar remarks were made in back channels to the.
So Dr. Rall is arguing, look, what he pointed out to Trump, either directly and through back channels, is the special military operation will cease to be a special military operation and it turn into an actual war, meaning we will declare war. That's Dr. Rall's argument. Dr. Rall has been the one who said Putin has been weak, and people around Putin has been looking at the fact that Putin has been too weak in regards to the way he's been dealing with Trump and these quote unquote negotiations where Donald Trump is pretending to be a negotiator while also being the guy who's actually running the war. And Dr. Rall's comment kind of balances with the Financial Times piece. I mean, after all, what do you say to Trump in that call, that 2.5 hour conversation? Putin is very diplomatic. He's very easy to talk to in regards to the way he deals with diplomatic language. Obviously, part of it was probably talking about business interests. But you would imagine that part of it also had to be, if you do that, we will do this. And there may have been back channel communications explaining this will be the consequences of you doing that. So your belief that we would escalate on Ukraine is absolutely right. We would escalate to the point of war. Is Dr. Rall right? I have no idea. I always tell you, never mistake coherent for the true. And I mean, of all of my guests, never mistaken a person being coherent for a person being true. Oftentimes when I'm bringing guests on, I want to hear different points of view so I can make my own assessment about which point of view I think is more accurate. And I can pull and take from the various points of view. I don't have to agree with my guests. Dr. Rall's case here may actually be right. Now, Donald Trump could have thrown the Tomahawk stuff out entirely for the point of a bluff. Do you put it past him? Think back when Donald Trump put out the bluff in regards to bone-crushing sanctions. We're going to have bone-crushing sanctions. Putin's spine is going to be crushed by these sanctions. And then let's have an Alaska summit as a dodge for the sanctions, because what he fully understood was the sanctions was going to have negative consequences on the U.S. economy. Is this something similar The peace process has stalled. Hey, man, I may give tomahawks. Who knows? He brings Zelensky here for the circus and for the show, not caring one iota about how this makes Zelensky look, or the fact that Zelensky was dragged all the way to Washington to be told no. He has a conversation with Putin before he has that meeting with Zelensky, and tomahawks, which may have always been a bluff, leaves the table for the time being. And at this point, he's like, all right, well, we're now going to have another negotiation. Was it always a bluff? Or was it a situation where the conversation with Putin adversely affected what Trump wanted to do and giving those tomahawks? Now, obviously, there was going to be difficulty with launching those tomahawks, even though they did have a launch vehicle. Who knows how many of those vehicles they could have gotten to Ukraine? Who knows how many of those missiles they could have supplied to Ukraine? Who knows how fast they could have gotten those missiles to Ukraine? So all of this stuff is nebulous, right? What we do know, though, is that whatever was said in that conversation, Trump backed down. Is Dr. Rall right? Now, Dr. Rall has argued that for all intents and purposes, Russia was considering declaring war the moment that those tomahawks were either delivered or those tomahawks were announced, that would have been the red line and the final straw. It's fascinating. One last point, Dmitry Medvedev. He says something that I really want to highlight. So Medvedev, when all of this clown show took place, put out a Telegram post. Now, the Telegram post is in Russian, so I had to translate it. But he says this: during a meeting with the tearful beggar, Trump said an obvious but quite curious thing: let Russia and Ukraine both declare themselves winner in the conflict. What he's referring to is a tweet that Donald Trump put out effectively. Hey, both sides can just declare that they win. Everybody can go home. All right. Medvedev continues. Yes, that often happens after military clashes, but this is not our case. And it is not just that we need a victory with conditions known to all. That is an axiom. The point is also that the current bandit gang will not be recognized as winners at home under any circumstances. And the drug addict scoundrel and his comrades understands this perfectly. The loss of territories will not be forgiven, not only by the rabid Ukrainian nationalists, but also by political competitors. Therefore, the end of the war means the death of the regime. So Trump's thesis does not work here. Basically, no. This idea that everybody goes home and declares themselves a winner, nonsense. They will lose, and not just lose. They will know that they lost. There's a difference in those things. No spinning it, no stabbing it back method, no none of that stuff. You will lose, and you will lose emphatically, and you would know it when you go to bed in the morning and when you wake up at night, 3 a.m. between you and your God. As Banderite as you are, you will know that you utterly and entirely failed. That is a premise of this war. That's not a book. That's a feature of what's necessary in the way that Medvedev is saying. However, the main peacemaker successfully played, quote, tomahawks, unquote, in his usual manner. He pressured global public opinion and ended the game in the best tradition of sending nuclear submarines. Obviously, Trump didn't send submarines, so this is Medvedev effectively saying Trump's full of shit. Sorry, bro, we don't have enough ourselves. It must be admitted that so far Trump is quite firm in the position, quote, this is not my war. The senile Biden is to blame for everything, unquote. However, even the senile one was against sending long-range missiles to the Banderites. Biden threatened it and backed down when Putin told him his response. But this is, of course, not the end of arming Kiev with new weapons, to be continued, and we must be ready for any developments of events. Making the other point, just because they back down now doesn't necessarily mean that they won't be trying to send other weapon systems or even Tomahawk missiles later. It's fascinating. That is fascinating. Look, as I pointed out, when Putin gave his response to Joe Biden threatening to send Tomahawks, Joe Biden had a conniption fit, backed down, and the European leaders that came, Joe Biden effectively was snapping at him because he understood the consequences of sending those missiles. It would mean that the United States was launching missiles directly into Russia. This is a taboo that would have been broken. That would have, you could say that HIMARS and those type of things, okay, fair enough, those things are directional, but Russia's made a very specific point of saying that the Tomahawks is the United States launching those missiles. It doesn't matter if you say they're mercenaries or people, contractors that are effectively launching those missiles. Military people pretending to be contractors will be launching missiles at Russia. Doesn't matter if Russia could knock down a percentage of those missiles. It doesn't matter if Russia can knock down 90% of those missiles. It's the point that the United States has entered the war and is launching and firing those at Russia. Those missiles will not change the context of the war. And so the only thing that you can do, this is kind of the worst of both worlds. This is what I often say about Iran and the nuclear enrichment. It's like, okay, so you don't want nuclear missiles, but you're enriching to like 70, 80%. Okay, just build the missile, dude. If you're going to do it, just build the missile, right? Trump backs off, and apparently they're going to Budapest. We'll see what comes of it. Is the United States willing and capable of accepting a surrender? Meaning they surrender in this case. It is hard for me to believe that a US president would be capable of doing that. By the same token, if that meeting is correct, or Financial Times is reporting that correctly, where Donald Trump is effectively browbeating Zelensky into accepting a deal, and Zelensky immediately goes to safe space of European leaders, maybe that means something. I just don't know what it means. My guest is here. We are joined with the man himself, Ajamu Baraka. Man, I am so glad that you can join me on this. I've never had you on the show. I've always wanted you on the show. So when you responded favorably to the email, I felt some kind of way. I was like, oh, that's great. How you doing? You doing okay this morning?
I can't complain. I can't complain. I mean, I'm at that point, when the old folks say that when you wake up in the morning, it's a good day. So it's always a good day for me when I'm here. I can join you and engage in this important conversation.
Yeah, you are not that old, but I appreciate it. I do appreciate it. And just for the audience, Ajamu Baraka, he's an international human rights activist, organizer, political analyst, national organizer for Black Alliance for Peace. I am deeply appreciative that you are here. Let me get your take on the Trump thing before we move to Venezuela and Colombia. I mean, obviously, Trump has been murdering Colombians and Venezuelans and calling them drug dealers in order to co-sign the fact that they're being murdered. We can jump to that in a moment. But just to piggyback on what I was pointing out about this kind of the weirdness, the bluff of tomahawks. And maybe it was a bluff, maybe it wasn't. It could have been a trial balloon, it could have been a bluff. But then the back down after the 2.5-hour conversation with Putin, the humiliation of Zelensky, again, coming to the White House, only be told no. It's like, you made me come all the way from Ukraine and tell me no on a grand stage in this way? Yes, he did. What do you think was going on with that? I'm just curious on your take.
It's really, I oppose the simplistic analysis of some people advance that Trump is just a moron. I mean, he is to a certain extent, and that there's no logic to what he and his administration are attempting to do. But what we do see, I think, is a lack of coherence in their approaches. And he seems not to either understand or care that when he utters certain things, it has international implications. And he continues to make comments that then once the moment passes and he's reminded of the objective limitations, he's enforced to walk back.
Yep.
So, this notion of playing with the idea of providing tomahawks, and most people who were serious knew that wasn't really going to happen. That would be a step basically too far. It caused them to have to then retreat. And as you said, it's almost like stringing along Zelensky. I mean, everybody knows the war is finished, that these young men are being sacrificed weekly. In that case, Trump is in fact correct. Losing their lives for what? This is not going to end in a way that's going to be favorable to what exists or what remains of the Ukrainian state. So the sooner you get it over with, the better. But because of domestic politics, because of issues of ego, this thing is being strung along. So, it's a very dangerous game that the U.S. is playing. And Trump is very reckless and ill-disciplined with the use of his rhetoric. And this is another case where we see a dangerous situation potentially evolving, but with the steady leadership and influence of Putin and others, it was walked back.
What do you say to people who say Putin's pragmatism is a weakness? Like that, because I can make an argument that, yes, Putin has kept us out of a larger war. Agreed. 1000% agreed. And if 5 years pass and we're still here because the world hasn't necessarily gone to a nuclear war, it's like, okay, good. Putin did a good job. He was right? But there's another argument that can be made, in this temporal space where we haven't made it to 5 years yet, that the very act of the pragmatism is what allows him to be tested in this way. Like, meaning, if Putin is pushed into a corner, any world leader of a great power that's pushed into a corner is going to respond. But an argument can be made that maybe you won't get to that response of being pushed into a corner if you are a bit more of a hard ass before you get to that point. And, I don't know the conversation Trump had with Putin. Putin might have told him, we will declare war in real terms if you do that, meaning we will destroy Ukraine, which is what Financial Times pointed out, that Putin said he would destroy Ukraine if this war keeps going. What Putin might have told him is, if you give those tomahawks, we would declare war. This would not be a special military operation. This would be an outright war, and we would decimate Ukraine, which may be what Financial Times is being translated as being filtered through Donald Trump. Is that the guy who's needed? Meaning, it's very possible that Trump was serious about the tomahawks, that it was the conversation that made him back down. I don't know which one it is. It could be Trump is crazy enough to do it, right? And so it could have been a trial balloon. What is the Russian response going to be? Or it could have been completely a bluff. Either way, he had to walk it back. Is this the guy who would be better off, meaning the Putin who's more of a hard ass, as opposed to the one that's more pragmatic, that continuously get tested by NATO? Which one? I'm curious on your take on this.
Well, let me make 2 points before we get to that very important element. One, I don't think that in the private conversation that he would threaten possibility of all-out war on the United States. Now,
not on the U.S., on Ukraine.
On Ukraine. The effect would be about the same, of course, but I don't think that would be the threat. Secondly, I think that let me go straight to the question. The pragmatic. I think you raise a very important point, and I think what we have seen in the last few years with the Russian Federation is that they have recognized that kind of pragmatism is informed by what? A sense of there's a common commitment to reason.
Right.
I think that both the Russians and the Chinese have finally come to the conclusion that they might not always be dealing with rational actors in the upper echelons of decision making within the United States of America, and so they have adjusted their approaches to that reality. So, it is and it was, I think, a weakness in the past. I think in the negotiations with the Biden administration leading up to the special military action, there was a real belief that the Biden administration would adhere to objective principles and common interests, and would want to avoid creating a situation that would compel the Russians to have to go into eastern Ukraine. But it became quite obvious that wasn't going to happen. We know that the war continued. We know that the war started in Ukraine in 2014. There's no question about that. Among people who follow this, and that it was being escalated through the various administrations, including the Trump first administration, and that by 2021 or so, they had concluded that they were prepared. They were prepared for the next phase of this. So, as Angela Merkel and Francois Hollande said, the Minsk agreements were basically just to buy some time to build up the Ukrainian military forces.
Yep.
And so from the Russian point of view, it was in fact war being planned, and they knew that the U.S. was going to come in. Right before the movement into eastern Ukraine, we know that a week before that, there was probes taking place along the line of contact. And then they were dropping in the U.S. media and Western media the propaganda point that, look, if you hear about certain kinds of exchanges of military action between Ukraine and the Russians, it's propaganda. That basically is not Ukraine, but it is in fact the Russians. So in some ways, the Russians preempted what was going to be an inevitable a movement on the part of Ukrainian forces, and to avoid being pushed back and trapped up against their borders. I know I went into a whole lot of detail. It wasn't necessary.
You're perfectly fine.
This channel.
Detail is fine.
Yeah.
No, you're perfectly fine.
Yeah. So basically, these lessons were learned by the Russian Federation, and so when they have, and I think that the U.S. side, and let's remember now, Trump is not an independent actor. As much as he has attempted to expand the power of the executive, Trump is still constrained by objective interests in the U.S. that are much more powerful than the presidency. Okay, and so he was not going to risk the all-out war with the Russian Federation. But what we see today is a recognition that as a consequence of the Russian Federation sticking to its demands regarding how this conflict would end, they have not been susceptible to the kinds of bluster and bluffing coming from the U.S. side. But what the Trump administration needs to understand is that there's a narrative developing now that is not too favorable to the U.S., that Trump will bluff and engage in bluster and then back down. That undermines his tough guy image, and so it's counterproductive to continue with this.
Yeah, taco Trump, right? Trump always, Trump always calls it off something.
Something like that, but it's bad.
Yeah, it makes you look. It's why I always said the U.S.'s interests. It doesn't really care about the actual contours of certain things. Like, the U.S. has an interest in overextending Russia. It has an interest in giving weapons and everything to Ukraine. It doesn't necessarily care about the internal dynamics between these two, what Russia considers it existential, meaning they don't get into the details. We don't get into the weeds. We have interests. We're a hegemon. We're a superpower, right? That's the way we think. And on this one, I think we're bumping our heads on this and on China, where it's like, no, which is a new norm in a way that the U.S. operates, where it seems to be grotesquely unfamiliar in dealing with peers. But they're learning. They're learning the hard way. Hopefully, we don't end up in a larger war for it. I want to move to the Caribbean for a bit. Yeah. I find this to be a degradation of society as represented by the office of the president itself. Listen to a response that Trump made to a question on Venezuela. I personally, I don't think presidents should curse in public, but that's me being being old.
Maduro offered everything in his country, all the natural resources. He even recorded a message to you in English recently, offering mediation. What should we do in order to stop that?
He has offered everything. He's offered everything. You're right. You know why? Because he doesn't want to fuck around with the United States. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah. I think I think that story was a little bit exaggerated. I think in the course of conversations between the Venezuelan government and the U.S. government, they were exploring what are the kinds of agreements that they might be able to come to terms with that could de-escalate the situation. But in typical fashion, coming from the U.S., this was seen as both a weakness and an opportunity. Yes. And the opportunity was to share this with the world, to indicate that they were basically ready to surrender and to undermine confidence in some of their major supporters, that the Venezuelan government would, if necessary, sell out their interests also. So it was very slick a move on the part of the U.S. But look, it's quite clear that there is an intent here to lay the foundation for the justification of a military strike on Venezuela, with the clear objective of so-called regime change. And what is the objective here? Clearly, not any concern about crime or the drug flow from Latin America into the U.S. It's about regime change. And what is interesting, I think, and sad too, is the ease in which they can create this justification. Falling back on the old crime trope, and the notion of the U.S. being overwhelmed by the drugs coming from this narco state. And it's understandable that many people in the center or even the right would fall for that. But what is really disheartening is the ease in which even left forces fall for that and abandon the principles of national sovereignty. That basically whatever contradictions or whatever you may perceive in the Venezuelan process is their process. And the U.S. has no objective right to interfere into the internal processes of any nation on this planet. And then when you don't adhere to the principles of self-determination and national sovereignty, then you are objectively aligning yourself with the interests of the imperialist project. You've got to understand that and make a choice. But I think many so-called leftists in the U.S. and in the West have made a choice, and their choice is to stand with Western imperialism. And so this is a contradiction that for us who are in the center, in the crosshairs of the colonial projects coming from the U.S. and the Western European forces, it shows us that we have some shaky allies in the West. Because we stand forthright in the principles of self-determination and sovereignty. We may have issues and see certain kind of contradictions, but we understand that there is a certain kind of dynamic, a certain kind of motion taking place. We stick with the Americas. That's fairly progressive, and that we're not going to undermine or support the undermining of a Venezuela in favor of what? This right-wing individual who they gave the so-called Nobel Peace Prize. This is the extreme right in the Venezuela process. These are freaks. These are criminals. And you're talking about a bloodbath. That's what would occur if these people were forced into the Venezuela situation. Plus, too, it'll be completely delegitimized. People have to understand or remember, or maybe just understand the history of U.S. interventions in Latin America, such that there is this super sensitivity to U.S. interventions, and any state that will openly align itself with an interventionist strategy is going to be delegitimized, and that the only way they're going to be able to maintain themselves is a real dictatorship, a vicious dictatorship, which of course is part of the reason why there's so much rejection of U.S. interventions, because people in Latin America remember very closely what they went through with these U.S. imposed military dictatorships across the continent. So this is a failed strategy. They may have the ability to intervene into Venezuela, to force the government to evacuate the capital, perhaps, but they cannot win in Venezuela. And people have to understand, if you are concerned about war and warmongering, then you've got to take a more principled and clear-headed stance on this issue of what is unfolding in Venezuela. Look, the U.S. understands Venezuela is key to the entire Americas region. That if you have a free Venezuela, able to take advantage of the 303 billion barrels of petroleum that they have access to. I mean, look at the kind of weight and influence that these little monarchies have from the UAE, Qatar, and the Saudis. You know, if the Venezuelans were allowed to operate under normal global economic conditions, that they have the resources to be able to support the projects that we know are in place and unfolding, that is very, very progressive, in fact, even radical. And the U.S. authorities understand that. And that's why for them, it's not just a question of regional hegemony for the U.S., but basically the global balance of forces.
You would think that after weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, that the public would be more skeptical of a president just making it up.
I think so.
I mean, Trump is literally, with not one law to back it up. Just murdering Venezuelans in a boat and claiming that we're supposed to believe a habitual liar, that these are drug dealers, quote unquote, as if it would be okay, even if they were. And he's been doing this to Venezuelans, Colombians. Apparently, there was somebody from Trinidad and Tobago on one of those boats. Are you shocked that there's not more backlash to this in the States? I mean, it seems to be an anesthetized population where it's like, well, Trump is murdering people in the Caribbean, and they're like, okay, well, he's murdering people in the Caribbean. Oh well.
I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed in left forces that are not raising more serious questions and demonstrating more obvious opposition to this. As you said, the legal basis of it is dubious at best. They have indicated that there is legal justification for this by dusting off certain provisions around enemy combatants. And these individuals representing a clear threat to the U.S. homeland, that gives the Trump administration the right to engage in extrajudicial executions. We got to remind ourselves too, though. This is important, and this is people say it's what about it, but it's not. It's about having a perspective that properly contextualizes the historical moment. We might remember that the Obama administration, they murdered 3 U.S. citizens. Okay,
yes, they did.
And the question was raised. Well, what gives a U.S. president the right to order an extrajudicial murder of a U.S. citizen? Well, they say, well, we gave them due process. What kind of due process? Well, there was a due process that was supposedly done within the context of the Justice Department, in which they looked at the rights of these individuals and then determined, well, we do have a right to kill them.
Yep.
Without a trial, including a 16-year-old child.
Yep.
So the foundations of this gradual move towards fascism, we have to remind people constantly, has been laid over the last decade or so. Okay, and so while the Trump administration is the most dramatic in their expressions of using the power of the executive, the political and ideological foundations were being laid for quite some time. Look, the whole Russian Gate BS. What was that? That was basically providing a justification for the state to determine, what kind of information, what kind of speech was allowable. And conditioning people to accept the state making those kinds of determinations. So then we end up having things like misinformation and all of this kind of nonsense. We saw this alignment or this alliance that took place between the state and big tech and regulating speech and information and thought on social media platforms. These were the foundations being laid. And this use now of, for example, of state power to legally go after your opponents. Lawfare applied in the U.S. started under the Democrats.
Yes.
What was the whole movement against the Trump forces?
Yes.
You had the FBI raiding the house of a former president in the midst of a conversation or a discussion, a negotiation that they were having between the former president and the government around what documents were going to be allowable for him to retain. In the midst of those conversations, they decided they're going to raid his house. Look, it's just silliness, okay? We got to put this stuff in perspective, because if you don't, you end up inadvertently providing a rationale, a justification for supporting the Democrat Party as an opposition that doesn't exist. It doesn't exist.
Agreed.
These folks are not opposed to the consolidation of fascism in this country. The movement toward fascism has been a decision that was made by the ruling elements. They tried the soft power with Barack Obama. They tried centrist policies under Biden, and they decided they are going to abandon liberal democracy, the liberal framework, because it's now it's a yoke in terms of their ability to try to maintain the hegemony, and they're going with a fascist consolidation under Trump. These are objective. These are objective interests, objective conditions. It has nothing to do with the mentality, the psychology of Donald Trump. This is a class program.
Do you think? Yes, agreed. First and foremost, agreed. Do you think part of that is based on the way the American system is arranged? Like we have this rugged individualism. We have this idea of this kind of capitalistic system, this hyper-capitalistic system, where that soaks into the very DNA of a person in regards to the way that they value the world, value other people. That it is very difficult over time to, let's say, instill a value set of commonality and common purpose when everything else pushes in the direction of you're an individual, period. Then you get the fracturing of people's and their point of view on social media. So if whatever my point of view is, I can just read that or watch that. I don't have to listen to other people's point of view. I can exist in my bubble as an individual within the context of that bubble. Meaning, it seems that many of the elements of the way America is arranged pulls against this idea of some kind of common purpose, in which case you almost need, and this is not me calling for this, but I'm saying it can be understood why this kind of fascist hammer will come down in the sense of we must maintain the integrity of the state and the integrity of the country. And the way we maintain the integrity of the country is through this kind of fascist overhaul in the way that we operate. Meaning this may go beyond just Trump. This may go into a program that is being employed. Give me your take on that.
I definitely think it's a program that's going to continue because look, what is fascism? Fascism is basically a capitalist reform. It is a move on the part of the ruling capitalist class to create and support a politics that will allow for capitalism to continue. It's quite clear that the shelf life of capital is really already up, and we see the results of that globally with the so-called Gen Z protests taking place in various countries around the world. And what are they protesting? They're protesting the inability of their capitalist economies in their particular national environments to provide for them a humane existence, one in which their fundamental human rights are being recognized and fulfilled. And the issue is this: there is no reconciliation of these internal capitalist contradictions, because capitalism cannot provide the kind of prosperity that people are looking for. It cannot in its present form, and therefore it is stuck. That's stuck, but it has determined that the way it continues itself is through the use of military means and violence, the continuation of state and structured violence in order to maintain its hegemony. So these are the kind of tensions that will continue, despite whoever is sitting in the white people's house in 2028. That this continues. This commitment to global white supremacy is going to continue. How else can we explain, going to your earlier question in terms of how we can live with the slaughter of Gaza and not learn? Well, how do you explain the slaughter of Gaza? These people, these Palestinian human beings, were perceived to be less than human, right, and therefore they were killable. And the Western powers set back and allowed for this to happen. There's no systematic sanctions placed on the Israelis. There's no systematic opposition coming from the highest forms of government in the U.S. In fact, when the young people on the college campuses, primarily at the elite schools, that is, their sons and daughters, begin to oppose the genocide, what happens? They feel the full weight of the repressive apparatus. Okay. Yes. So these are the terms of struggle people need to understand, that basically when you allow for humanity to be divided between the humans and the non-humans, then those non-humans are in fact killable. And that's what we are finding with the extrajudicial executions taking place off the coast of Venezuela. Instead of people being interdicted and given a chance to be with the assumption of to be innocent until proven guilty, they are murdered. The U.S. that has abrogated to itself the right of being the judge, jury, and executioner, and can get away with it. It's all right. Who cares about the lives of Venezuelans? If the images that we saw coming out of Gaza with starving children, with people being tortured, if that would have been in a European nation, that war would have been over in 2 days. It wouldn't have been tolerated. But we can go 2 years of of people being burned to death, tortured, bombed, traumatized, starved. And now the Israeli fascists have now decided they're going to stop the entry of aid going into Gaza. How can you explain the continuation of this if you don't bring in the element of white supremacy and racism? Again, I know people don't want to deal with this because it's divisive or whatever, but we can't play with this any longer. You can't talk about trying to build an effective opposition if you don't deal with these internal issues. If you don't deal with the fact that how is it that so many people in the West will identify with white power, basically, and allow for the murder of Palestinians, who will fall for the trope of criminality in Haiti and support the intervention of the U.S., in essence, into Haiti to undermine the political process, because these wild black people in Haiti, they don't represent a legitimate political struggle. They're not struggling for a real self-determination and democracy. They're just criminals and being subjected to the activities of so-called criminal gangs. And people fall for it and fail for it. So we have to now educate, our friends in Colombia, our friends in Mexico, that this is not a legitimate move on the part of the United Nations. This gang suppression resolution that was passed in the United Nations last week. This is the continuation of a plan, a project spearheaded by the U.S. to basically undermine democracy in Haiti. So all of these things are interconnected, and they all can be explained not only in terms of the objective colonial capitalist interest, but the ideological justification for it, which is grounded in white supremacy.
Only thing I would quibble with the entire statement was not just allowed it, supported it, backed it, paid money for it, put weapons into it. Meaning Europe. Like Europe didn't just sit like, oh, that sucks. Europe was actually contributing to that stuff. I mean, they were all in on the genocide. I mean, let's be honest, right? It's not just the U.S. colony; it's also a colony of Europeans, and so
basically all of them are now complicit, because you have Article 3 under the Genocide Convention, Section E. It says basically you can be indicted for complicity with genocide. These states have a responsibility to have not only prevented genocide, but now they have a responsibility to deal with the issue of punishment. But instead, they supported, as you said, they supported the genocide. All of the nations that continued providing economic support in terms of even trade relationships, they have some serious questions to deal with, because that could be, in fact, interpreted as complicity with this genocide.
See, that's
so this whole Gaza thing is I think a turning point. A turning point not only in terms of undermining, exposing the limitations of Western morality, but raising questions about the international system itself.
Yeah, Gaza was a wake-up call. It was a wake-up call for me. Because I sat there like, we were watching kids get ritualistically murdered on a daily basis. And you think to yourself, okay, well, and I've always made this argument, international law doesn't exist. I was proven right in that point. I mean, otherwise that can't necessarily take place. I realized that the whole think about never again, the reality of it is the only reason the world cared about the Holocaust the first time around was because we fought a war with the Germans and we needed to stick it to the Germans, not because we cared about the population itself. Meaning governments are realist governments. They look at a situation and they think to themselves, how much do we want to expend to get involved in that situation? If it doesn't affect them, then they don't care. I guess I didn't realize it before, and maybe that's stupid me. I realize it now. And so you get the majority of the world that just watched and continued its trade relationship with Israel as Israel was continuing this genocide. And yes, I know the United States paid the lion's share of that money and the weapons and everything else and political support. But still, let's be honest, the rest of the world effectively sat there and watched.
But let me push back on that though. See, I've been tempted to sort of modify that position on the rest of the world. I think it's important to say that in the global South that represents the majority of humanity, there was no confusion on what we were watching in Gaza.
Yes.
The issue is that in the Western world, where they have in fact the power to be able to do something about that, that is the part of humanity that allowed that to continue. That sat back and in fact watched. And again, I argue that happened because of the inability to identify with these human beings. Now, everybody didn't do that, of course, because we had these courageous young people in the U.S. We have people across Western Europe and even in parts of the U.S. That took forthright principled positions in opposition to the genocide. So everybody wasn't impacted. Everybody in the West is not condemnable, but the governmental representatives and powerful forces in the West that had the ability to put a stop to this, they did nothing. In fact, they did the opposite. The U.S. vetoed a ceasefire in Gaza how many times? 6 times or so. So yeah, they are all implicated. But yeah, no, I think we need to make a division between the world and the West.
That's fair. Yeah, this is my Western chauvinism coming out of me on this one. No, you're absolutely right. Not everybody in the world agree with this. The majority of the world, or a large part of the world, effectively understood. No, you're absolutely right. Where do you think, just to go back to the Venezuela thing before we close, where do you think that goes? How far do you think Trump goes with that? Is this a pressure campaign? Or do you think there's a clip where the United States has been militarizing Puerto Rico, where they have all of this military hardware and everything else in Puerto Rico as if they're trying to threaten a strike. Considering the degree of anesthesia that the American public seems to be on with all of this taking place, because this is amazing. And I'm not one of those people that believe that the left, quote unquote, or let's say people who would vote for Joe Biden or the Democrats are the left. I mean, they look at this stuff, they're just as imperialist as anything. If you have a Democratic hands on the tiller, they are perfectly okay with what's taking place. Meaning if this was Joe Biden doing it, they would not be complaining about it under any circumstances. They're militarizing Puerto Rico. How far do you think to go with this? I mean, do you think that this really is a regime change operation, or do you think it's a pressure campaign with the idea of working with internal elements? And maybe there's not a difference in those things. But do you think that?
No, I think that they're going past the pressure campaign. I think that I think that they are moving toward a real strike, and I think the only thing that could put a brake on this would be if there was effective internal opposition, meaning opposition within the U.S. and by extension in the West. Unfortunately, that's not happening. So this is a very dangerous situation for the government and the people of Venezuela, because you have the U.S. basically operating as a rogue state, and there's no constraints on this state, and so they want that 303 billion barrels of oil that Venezuela has, and they want the oil in Guyana. And the authorities of the state in Guyana doesn't seem to understand that basically you are going to lose whatever little sovereignty you have if that in fact occurs, if so-called regime change takes place in Venezuela. So no, I think unfortunately we are facing a very dangerous situation. That's why many of us are racing, trying to help people to understand the terms. Yes, Puerto Rico is important. See, this issue with them using Puerto Rico as a forward deployment area raises again the question of Puerto Rican independence. There's a very strong independence movement that's now have been revived in the last few years, and it's important that we support that. But again, you got this goofy ass left that doesn't seem to understand the terms of these struggles. Puerto Rico has to be independent. And we connect Puerto Rico independence with the independence of Haiti. Both of these are connected. And that's one of the reasons why the Black Alliance of Peace, we have been racing for the last couple of years, trying to develop this campaign on making the Americas a zone of peace. We're trying to develop what we refer to as an American-wide consciousness. That those of us who live in North America, you part of the Americas. And so basically our interests, those of us who are colonized in the North American context, we have an objective interest in affiliating with and being part of this anti-colonial struggle that's taking place in the Americas. And we can't allow for the U.S. to be able to assert itself in these repressive ways in our region. And so we are calling for a zone of peace in response to what the call that was made in 2014 by the community of Latin America and Caribbean states. We have to popularize that campaign. We say we must eject the U.S. from our region, because all they're bringing to our region is death and destruction. So that's why we are pushing this campaign. It's an anti-imperialist campaign, and we need it today more than any other time. So yes, we are building opposition, and there will be opposition. We don't know if we're going to have the effective forces yet to stop this attack. The one thing that did happen, and this is important, is now the Trump administration has now connected Colombia to his orbit of repression, you know, and that's a very important and interesting kind of move, because Colombia is key also in this region. And so you know, this is a development that is really laying out a new terrain in terms of how the struggle for Latin American independence is going to play out over the next few months and next couple of years.
Yes, everything you just said, I agree. Ajamu Baraka, man, thank you for this. When you responded to my email, I was so excited, right? I voted for you. By the way, you was down when you guys ran. So no, I followed your career for a while, ever since you were running in that election, and I really appreciate you joining me. And I hope you come back. I really do.
I appreciate it. Let's do it again. We just touched the surface.
Absolutely. Ajamu Baraka. He is an international human rights activist, organizer, political analyst. He is national organizer for Black Agenda for Peace. And you have a fantastic rest of your day, man. Thank you for this.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye. All right. I am enamored that Ajamu Baraka could join me. That's very cool to me. And he caught the vapors. Well, I'm excited when a guest wants to come on the show. You know, again, my assumption is nobody wants to. So no, shout out to him for joining me. Hopefully he'll come back. Hopefully this wasn't a pain. Ajamu is on point. Yes, he is. He's very good. He is very, very good. Let's see, Mr. Riffley. For the record, I do not see any stains on Ted Rall's shirt, and I am looking for them. Yeah, when Ted said that, I was like, he has a stain on his shirt. That's funny. That is funny. That is funny. I'll just say Rosa. Rosa 1. What is this? Rosa 12. Is that 41 or 11? 1211. Rosa 1211. Ted Rall, amazing. What if Republicans lose the midterm elections? What happens? Then Democrats get put back in the office without doing a goddamn thing for being put back in the office. That's what happens. That's what happens. Video title outdated. Bring back Berletic. Berletic has to want to come on the show. I can't force him back, Kevin Wayne. I have talked to him. He said he will make time next week. So fingers crossed. We'll see. This is Warrior RTYR Warriors for peace. Colonial capitalism must end. Ajamu. Yeah, these colonial wars and this capitalistic expansion as a, let's say, incentive to these colonial wars is deeply problematic. There is nothing in nature that grows forever. And if indeed you're coming up with a capitalistic system that's supposed to be an overlay to nature with the idea that it grows forever, you are kidding yourself. You're kidding yourself. And I know people was like, well, there's a difference between, you know, corporations and small business. A child grows up. Is there a difference between a boy and a man? Yes. But let's be honest, those things are the same system, and one is always trying to be the other. So, but Ajamu, shout out to him. Shout out to Ted Rall. Shout out to Karja. I'm glad Karja is back. So there is that. What about Sarah Bills? Will she come back? I haven't spoken to Sarah Bills. After she flipped out and left, I haven't spoken to her. I will tell you this. I care immensely about my show. Immensely about my show. If an argument is being made that I find to be ridiculous, yeah, and there's a flip out as a result of me basically saying I disagree with that, I'm going to feel some kind of way. Not that I'm mad at her, and I still say DD Geopolitics is fucking phenomenal. There's an unpredictability element that I just don't want associated with the show. That's all. Unpredictability is an issue, man. Just the facts that you're doing something for, what is this? Just the fact that you're doing something for in return to, quote, make money or whatever, that's capitalism. Capitalism is more complicated than that. It's not just that. I mean, you've had people who were making money forever before you had a capitalistic system. It is, I'm trying to think of the precise argument, the thing for it. It means by which goods are sold and bought with the market. Of course, there's going to be private enterprise that are built into the private property that requires a state in order to force people to buy into that system. Meaning, if you decide to sell lemons, you grow them and you sell them, and that's your profit. The government at some point is going to come knocking on your door for taxes. Like, meaning, even if you decide that you wanted to live off the grid, the government is going to come and ask you for taxes. There's no way to buy out the system. The state forces you to be in the system. There's no way out. You're forced to be on a plantation. Even if you get to choose your plantation, you're forced to be on a plantation in some particular way. Even doing this, right? Like, you are producing content to be packaged and sold to a various audience. There's no way out of that box. Even if you're not in the state, you still have to pay taxes. There's no way out the box. State plays a part in it. I know a lot of these people who are these uber capitalists are like, yeah, man, or narco capitalists are like, yeah, man, we need to get rid of the state. Dude, the state is a principle of the capitalist system. Full stop. There's no way out that box. No way out that box. And Mr. Flipping out, but not surprised at all to hear it happen. Well, I'm surprised. I was fucking surprised. I mean, dude, think of all the arguments I've had on this show. I've people who are friends of mine, by the way. Ted and I have gotten to back and forths. John Kariakou and I have gotten to back and forths. Alex Craner, him and I get into back and forths all the time. Jesus, I mean, you can run the gambit. Most of my guests, I disagree with them. Hell, even Lathan and I have gotten to back and forth on the issue of Russia. I disagree with my guests all the time. I think it makes it more interesting when you're talking to a guest and the guest is saying something and you need clarification on it, that you may or may not disagree on that particular topic point. And the push is the thing that gets them to clarify their point. In that clarification, you may agree with them. In the clarification, you may disagree with them. But there's a clarification. And me as a host, what is the point of having a show where you just sit here and let the person say stupid shit or stuff that you disagree with? No, if it's something that you want more information or clarification, yes. Or if it's something you just bluntly disagree with because you think it's silly, you say so. Otherwise, what's the point? Right? So, I don't know. To each their own. None of them have lost it. None of them have thrown a hissy fit and left. None of them. And again, the point that was being made, I'm sorry, it's silly. It's just silly. The idea that the president doesn't have power, it's nonsense. The president is literally murdering people in Venezuela as we speak. The president is literally putting people on the streets in the military uniform. I don't have that capability. Is that a power? Yes. It's like, and some of the audience is like, yeah, man, she's right. The president has no power. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Fuck are you talking about? I don't care. I don't care. I've said it on more than one occasion. What the audience thinks, if I think they're wrong. I just don't. Some people take issue with that. I don't know why you take issue with that. I don't know any of you in real terms. If 2 + 2 is 4, I'm going to call it 4. I don't care how many people say otherwise. And if something is patently, obviously true, then I'm going to say it's true or false. So you're absolutely right about that, Jamal. Yeah, I mean, of course I am. Of course. I mean, that's not even like a workable, that's not even an honest take. I mean, maybe the person agrees, but I get the sense that a lot of people get very cynical and they allow their cynicism to lead them astray in the things that they think. And so they take the wildest point of view and run with that point of view. And of course, the loudest point of view is often the one that a lot of people gravitate towards, whether it's true or not. I've seen this happen. I've been doing YouTube for a very long time. And the only point of view that a person can take is that they only hold their shit. If they think that the person is right, you should say so, which I don't have an issue with. If I'm playing, oh yeah, you're right, fair enough. But making an argument to me that the president has no power is nonsense. It's patently absurd on its face. Who pays $1 billion for a person to get in office if that person has no power? When Donald Trump decides to send military out to murder a Colombian fisherman, or to murder whoever, or to make a peace treaty, or to, I don't know, tell Zelensky he's not getting tomahawks, a choice is being made. The office is making that choice. You could say that people are pushing him. Fair enough. But let's be honest, they're pushing him through the lens of that office in order to kind of make those determinations. I don't have the power to send military to somebody's house. The president does, obviously. All right. I am going to call this a day. The president is a puppet. Look, all of these guys, none of these people are, if the standard is that the person has to stand by themselves and make a choice, then no world leader fits that mode. None. Every leader is there because of a power base. Full stop. Even Putin has a power base where he listens to the people around him and he makes a choice based on the decisions and the conversations that these guys are having. Donald Trump is dumb as a box of rocks. Donald Trump is easily maneuvered. That is true. Within the context of that, the power that is being projected is coming from the office, not the individual, and the office is composed of people who are around him. And of course, his own wants. If he is trying to implement Project 2025 and decides, hey, I'm going to send military to various states. Hey, I'm going to get rid of certain deductions in blue states. I'm going to fire all of these workers. I will tell you, if you're one of those people that are fired and the president was the one that fired you, you are going to believe that he had the power to do it. I, Randall Jamal, don't have the power to give that person their job back or to take that person out of work. I'm trying to make the point of saying it's ludicrous that the president doesn't have power. It's nonsense. Right, sure. Rocks are smarter. Well, rocks might be smarter. Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. I am going, all I'm saying is she maybe was speaking within the narrow frame of, look, this is math. I used to be a software engineer. If a statement is true or if a statement is false, that is a Boolean statement. It's 0 and 1. If this equals this, then you get a value. If this does not equal this, then it's a false. Whatever context is put, it is a blanket statement. If the blanket statement, any part of that blanket statement is wrong, then the statement is wrong. It's a logic issue, which I kept saying, if this is a logic issue, it's false. It's a logic issue. Either way, it's irrelevant. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. If then, yes. If then, if this, then that, yeah. Guys in Venezuela were ordered years ago. Well, they have been trying to take down Venezuela for a very long time. I mean, even before Juan Guaido came into play. You can go back to the Bolivarian Revolution with Hugo Chavez, and they had him in the back about to put a bullet in him. But in that case, you got massive protests coming out in the streets, which changed things. SB just lost a temper, got triggered. Yeah, but it's triggered over something silly. Like, look, if I'm having an argument with an Israeli and we are having this conversation about genocide, I'm going to be heated in that conversation. I'm going to be heated. But people are being killed. So the fact that people are being murdered on a massive fucking scale gives me license to be hot. Whether it's to my benefit or not to be hot in that argument, I'm probably going to be heated in that argument. I'm going to be there on the edge of being pissed off. That's not the conversation that we were having. That's not the conversation we were having. We were talking about something completely irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. Get a geologist on, bro. To talk about what? To talk about what? Well, I don't know what she always does. I mean, look, my relationship with Sarah was entirely online, meaning the only time I really talked to her was online. Every blue moon, it might have been a chat, but the chat was usually about the show or about scheduling for the show. I don't have, I don't like talking about people when they're not here. And so I'm not Obviously, I'm not saying anything bad about her. I just disagree with her take. I will say her and I related differently, which is kind of hard to explain. If I'm talking to, let's say, Mark, if I'm talking to Ted, like, for example, Ted and I talk like very familiars, but I've known Ted for a long time. And so when Ted and I are interacting, we are talking shit, right? Like there's a very easy means of the conversation, even if him and I are disagreeing. There's a very easy way that Ted and I talk to each other, just because we've had so many conversations at work, off work, etc. That you come across more like friends as opposed to just, I'm interviewing this person. It's a conversation. There's some people you interview. Mark is somebody you interview because you're eliciting information from Mark that you may not know and that Mark is going to try to explain and elucidate. I realized Zara was somebody you also have a conversation with and you talk to. It's just easier. It's hard to interview her. It's easier to have a conversation with her. My knowledge of her is compact. I mean, it gets over the course of, I don't know, a few months. My knowledge of Ted goes back much longer. So there's no way for me to know trigger points or things that may bother her. Let's say it that way. And oftentimes when I'm doing an interview, I'm not looking at the person, I'm looking at the camera. So the person is only background. It's my peripheral vision. I can't tell if the person's being triggered off of something. I can tell in the context of the conversation. I can tell if the person's being stressed. But to me, a person being stressed in a conversation is just life. Yeah, it caught me off guard. It just caught me off guard. Her and I engage in a very odd way that I don't quite get. And it seems to lead to disagreements, which I'm okay with. I don't really care about the disagreements. That's just life. But that shit needs to be like lightning in a bottle. It should be contained. And I mean it for both of us. I don't mean that just for her. It's just an odd way of interacting. It's like a married couple. Or was it Ted? No, it wasn't Ted. Ted never gets triggered. Ted is always Ted. It's just, I'm trying to explain the way we relate and how the difference is in conversations. Ted may be the closest just because I engage with Ted so much. But I don't know her like I know Ted. So it's not like you have 8 years of background of knowing this person and getting familiar with this person. It's not that. It's, okay, you've known this person for all of, I don't know, 3 months. So it's just different. All right. I am going to end this and I'm going to call this a day. Oh, there's a chat. What's the chat? You and Ted dynamic is so awesome. Yeah, Ted, I like Ted. It's because I like him. I've always told you I'm transparent on the show. If I like a person, I like a person. If I don't, I don't. Usually the people I talk to are people who I like on some level. I've known Ted forever. Or not, that's not true. I've known Ted for about 8 years. Ted was always a regular on the show. And at the point where you're doing your YouTube show and you can talk to him and look at him and everything else, and you talk off scenes every so often, he's just easy to talk to. And him and I are very similar in that thinking. Like when I asked Ted, hey, what did you think about the King's Rally? No King's Rally. Ted's comment would have fit as firmly in my monologue. And I had not talked to him about it at all. Just not talked to him about it at all. But his explanation of it was the same thing that was bothering me. It's like, dude, where's your ass? This is like you guys are out here having a party, play acting. It's supposed to be a protest. There's supposed to be some kind of threat associated with the protest. You guys are out here in frog costumes. It's nice. It's fun. It's kid friendly. But you're protesting a man trying to become a dictator. You guys are out here in frog costumes. Will that work? I'm highly doubtful. Is it entertaining? Yes. Is there value in getting 7 million people out? I suppose so. But does the value translate into anything if it's a once-off? No. No. That's what I mean. It's like we get each other in this kind of way. Not to mention we often talk shit to each other. We have our conversations to be far more loose than some of the other interviews that I would have with people. No, I just like Ted. Ted is cool people. He's cool people. What is this? Fallen Crow. Power resides where cojones reside. Trump has power because he can slap the table and say, I'm the emperor. What is it? Power is a shadow on the wall. Power is where people think it resides. But there's also something else, this willingness to throw a punch. There's also that, right? Part of the reason that I thought Trump may actually give the tomahawks was because I thought that up to that point, Russia had been very pragmatic. And from the external point of view, that pragmatism had been seen as a weakness. And if indeed you think to yourself, well, what is Putin really going to do? How is he going to respond? Up to this point, he's done everything in his power to prevent a war. If Russia is really saying that the tomahawks are not going to change anything in the context of negotiation, meaning these are two different tracks in the way that Lavrov was saying, and if indeed they are arguing that, well, we'll shoot down most anyway because it's a 1980s weapon, fuck it, send the weapons. What are they going to do? Even if they say that this is going to adversely affect the relationship, okay, if later on we need to have some kind of negotiation to come to some peace deal, are they going to tell us no? The answer is probably going to be they're still going to be willing to have a peace deal. All right, so what's the harm? They're going to beat the shit out of Ukraine. They're already beating the shit out of Ukraine. So what's the harm? Like, you could easily step down a logic path where you end up with, well, they're going to complain and they're going to bash Ukraine. And if you think that those are the consequences, what's the hedge? Right? What stops you in the context? They're not going to attack us. They're not going to attack Europe. What's the hedge? We get to fire missiles into Russia. That's what we get to do. So you can find a logic path that would allow you to do this, which is why at a certain point I was like, okay, well, maybe it's not a bluff, especially if the response from Russia is not going to be prohibitive. I don't know the conversation that Putin had with Trump. Who knows? Maybe Dr. Roy is right. And they got through back channel communication, and Putin alluded to maybe the back channel communication that this is going to be a very bad day for Ukraine if you do this. Or maybe Trump was bluffing from the get-go, which is my original thought. Who knows? Who knows? Either way, that bluff was called. Russia wasn't going to change its policy. And that's the other part to this, right? It's not like Russia was going to say, oh my God, he's waving tomahawks. Now we're going to change our policy. This is a search for leverage. The problem doesn't seem to understand that from the Russian point of view, this is existential. And as it's existential, your search for leverage is a pointless endeavor. The war will continue until the objectives are accomplished. Period. There's no caveat in that. That is what it is, what it is. And so if you want to send tomahawks, you can do that. There will be consequences in some way. If you want to go after oil refinery, you can do those things. But those things are not going to stop the war. Well-dressed nerd, Brave. When was Sarah's segment? Oh, God, Brave. Don't ask me that. This was... I don't Okay, my internet is acting up. My internet is acting up. So this is my internet trying to tell me to call this shit a day. Brave, I don't know. I'm not bringing this shit up again. It doesn't matter to me. I don't like losing guests, so it's unfortunate. But it is what it is, man. It is what it is. All right. What is this? I was referring to internal American politics. Oh, I see. I was referring to internal American politics. Came a bit late to the show. I see. Came in time for the fascism thing. Along with Trump rules America. Oh, I see. I see. Look, it does matter, right? The willingness to throw a punch. I still go with the same thing. It's the willingness to throw a punch. If they are willing for Trump to say, well, yeah, there's no law that allows me to murder Venezuelan fishermen, but fuck it, I'm going to do it. He's choosing to do that, knowing full well that there's not going to be a consequence for him doing that. But that is pretty ballsy to do, right? Even if there is no consequence for it. It's just outside the bounds of what is normal in American parlance. Yes, we will murder people abroad. Usually those people are in the Middle East. Usually those people are not necessarily in the Caribbean. So it's a little weird. But yeah, I get your point. I do get your point. Auntie Ann, the biggest deal about Tomahawks is their ability to carry a nuclear payload. Kind of, yes. That's what makes them a dangerous weapon. So yes and no. The way Ukraine was going to launch those weapons, no. No. But do they have the ability to carry a nuclear weapon? Yes. Yes. So you're right. That is an issue if those things are being launched by air or boat or something like that. Ukraine was trying to get a mobile launcher. They even showed them, like on Slavyangrad, that the U.S. was like, hey, we have our new mobile launcher. Look at what we can do now. And of course, that was part of the threat or the bluff to send those things to Ukraine, saying that they're going to mass produce those launchers in order to give to Ukraine to do it. So, Auntie, yes. I guess that's a yes and no. There. Thank you for your correct grammar, Auntie. I appreciate it. But yes, that is one of the issues. That's one of the things Mark brings up, that they're nuclear capable. But it kind of depends on how they're launched. I could be wrong on this, but my understanding is it depends on how they launch, which would determine whether or not they're nuclear capable or not. In the way that Ukraine's trying to launch them, it's less likely that they're nuclear capable. But yes, you're absolutely right. They can carry a nuclear payload. That's one of the things that Russia's pointed out. It goes beyond that, though. It also goes into this taboo of the United States invading or intruding in Ukraine directly and firing missiles at Russia directly. That is a taboo that, all things being equal, you don't want broken. That would be the United States entering the war directly. That's the other taboo associated with it. It's not about the nukes. At least I don't think it's about the nukes. I think it's about that part. If you enter the war, you set a condition now that you are now firing missiles at us directly. Okay, well, what does that mean? If we allow that to take place, what else can your soldiers fire directly at Russia without us responding to it? So, but Auntie, yes, you're right. All right, we have come to the end. We have come to the end. I want to give a shout out to my guests, Carl Ja, Ted Rall, and of course, Ajamu Baraka. They have my deepest appreciation for joining me. I will see you guys bright and early tomorrow morning. Hopefully, I can get Alex Craner on in the morning. Fingers crossed. We'll see. I'm trying to think, is there anything else? No, I don't think there's anything else. You guys have a fantastic day. Legion, I told you, if I like somebody, I like somebody. If I don't, it's clear. You never have to guess with me. You never have to guess. Look, you may think that sucks, but that's also a power. At the very least for the audience to be able to know, what does the host think? The host is clear what he thinks. Have a good one, all. You be safe. You be kind to the degree that you can be kind. I see you bright and early in the morning. Have a good one, all.